Chapter 36-68. Lifeline Cultivation. Tian was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted with a gratified smile on his face. The fact that his martial Dao fate horoscope had reached the peak of the lifeline realm was definitely an unexpected surprise. At this moment, the Black Emperor seemed to have calmed down a lot. He fixed Tian with a burning gaze and asked in a deep voice, "Beacon Sovereign, you must have gone through many life-or-death battles recently, haven't you?" Tian nodded and smiled faintly. "Yeah. It wasn't just recently. To be exact, since his rebirth, life and death battles had never stopped. However, his luck and strength were very good, allowing him to survive until now." "No wonder your lifeline is growing so fast." Black Emperor laughed and said, "Martial destiny is not only a reflection of a martial artist's talent, but it also represents a martial artist's life force. The stronger the martial artist's martial destiny is, the stronger his life force. When a martial artist starts to cultivate the martial destiny, the appearance of the lifeline will greatly increase the martial artist's life force. When a martial artist's life is under great threat, the potential of the lifeline will be stimulated to protect the martial artist's life and continue to grow stronger. In a life and death situation, the potential of the lifeline will be stimulated more easily, and the speed of growth will be faster." Black Emperor looked at Tian and smiled bitterly. "Lord Beacon Emperor has only fused with the Fengtian Fate technique for a few months, and he has already advanced 9 lifeline meridians to the peak lifeline realm. This means that Lord Beacon Emperor has experienced many life and death battles." Tian smiled and said, "I'm not a cruel and bloodthirsty person. Most of the time, I have to fight." "I understand." Black Emperor smiled and said, "Many martial artists think that the fastest way to increase their strength is to cultivate in seclusion. In fact, the best way to increase a martial artist's strength is through constant training. The most effective way to increase your strength in battle is to increase your strength in battle." Tian nodded in agreement. After a moment of silence, Black Emperor suddenly looked at Tian and said, "Lord Beacon Emperor, I'm afraid you will soon have a challenger. In the next few days, I want to help you raise your martial Dao life providence and help you break through to the life pattern realm." "Challenger?" Tian was stunned. He didn't know where the challenger had come from. "Lord Beacon Emperor, you barged into the Triene Temple and killed the Triene Ghost King and Triene Ghost Soldier. You even killed the son of Yama Lord." The Black Emperor laughed bitterly and said, "Most importantly, you've embarrassed the Temple of 3 and the Great Emperor of 3. Although Great Emperor 3 has obtained the Black Warrior Mountain Range, he will definitely not give up. He must be very interested in you right now. He wants to know your background. This subordinate estimates that in a few days, Great Emperor 3 will send someone over, and it is very likely that he will come to challenge you." The Black Emperor laughed bitterly again after he finished speaking. Although he had temporarily protected Tian, if he continued to protect Tian, it would instead make Great Emperor 3 even more curious. Moreover, it was very normal for warriors to challenge each other in the city. As long as the age and strength gap wasn't too great, warriors usually wouldn't refuse a challenge. "So that's how it is." Tian smiled faintly and said, "Since there are challengers, let them come." The Black Emperor smiled faintly. He could sense an incomparably sharp aura from Tian. "Ghost Emperor, do you want to meet your old friend?" At this moment, Tian sent a voice transmission to the Ghost Emperor with a faint smile. "Forget about it for now." The Ghost Emperor laughed and said, "This Emperor didn't expect this old thing to be the Heaven Beacon priest. Since he's your subordinate, he naturally won't refuse to help. This Emperor won't show himself, haha." Tian shook his head with a smile and didn't say anything else. The Ghost Emperor had his own pride. It was obvious that he didn't want the Black Emperor to see his current state. "Lord Black Emperor, there's one more thing that I need your help with." Nye Tian didn't stand on ceremony and said directly, "Lord Beacon Emperor, please speak." The Black Emperor smiled faintly and nodded. Nye Tian didn't waste any time. He immediately let Lan Zhuiying out of the 9 extremities and told her about the brand of bliss. The brand of bliss. The Black Emperor pondered and looked at Lan Zhuiying for a long time. It was obvious that he was trying to sense the brand of bliss. After a while, Nye Tian couldn't help but ask, "How is it?" "It's a little difficult." The Black Emperor frowned and said, "The brand of bliss has already fused with the power of her bloodline. It won't be easy to remove it." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression turned a little ugly. "Nye Tian, it's fine." Lan Zhuiying smiled and wasn't too disappointed. She knew how terrifying the brand of bliss was, and she didn't have much hope. "Lord Beacon Emperor, I only said it's difficult. I didn't say it's impossible." At this moment, the Black Emperor chuckled. He looked at Lan Zhuiying and said, "Young lady, give this emperor some time to prepare. This emperor has the confidence to help you remove the mark." "Really?" Lan Zhuiying's eyes flickered and she exclaimed in surprise. Her eyes were wet. She didn't have much hope, but it didn't mean that she didn't want to remove the brand of bliss. On the contrary, she wanted to remove the brand of bliss even in her dreams. Unfortunately, she was disappointed every time. Now that someone said he could remove the brand of bliss, how could she not be excited? Of course. The Black Emperor smiled faintly and said, "I wouldn't dare to lie to Lord Beacon Emperor." "Thank you, Lord Black Emperor." Nye Tian smiled faintly and nodded sincerely. "It's nothing." The Black Emperor smiled faintly. He could tell that the relationship between Nye Tian and Lan Zhuiying wasn't simple. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought her to the Yin city. He was curious. How did Nye Tian know that he could remove the brand of bliss? He didn't think too much about it. He told Nye Tian briefly and arranged for him to enter the cultivation room. He wanted to help Nye Tian advance to the life pattern realm as soon as possible. The Black Emperor asked Song Nanyu to leave with Lan Zhuiying to make some preparations to remove the brand of bliss. Nye Tian sat cross-legged in the cultivation room with the Black Emperor standing beside him. The Black Emperor looked at Nye Tian and said, "Lord Beacon Emperor, use your heart to sense your lifeline. I'm about to begin." Nye Tian nodded and focused his mind to sense his lifeline. The Black Emperor moved his palm and a black rune appeared. It circled in the air and enveloped Nye Tian's body. At that moment, Nye Tian felt a mysterious power pouring into his life meridians, which made his 9 life meridians feel like they were about to explode. It was as if that power was urging his lifeline veins to grow and unleash more power. However, it was a painful feeling. His 9 lifeline veins felt like they were about to be torn apart. A moment later, beads of sweat appeared on Nye Tian's forehead. At that moment, the Black Emperor's palm suddenly sank down, and the black magical symbols were forced into Nye Tian's body. The terrifying power of the runes rushed into Nye Tian's lifeline space and seeped into his 9 lifeline veins. Chapter 36-69. The first appearance of life patterns in the cultivation room, Nye Tian's face was tense and his body was drenched in cold sweat. Boom! In his life meridian space, the violent rune power was like a ferocious beast, crazily attacking his 9 life meridians. At the same time, his 9 life meridians were filled with a sharp pain, as if they were about to be torn apart. This sharp pain instantly spread throughout his body through the life meridian space. The terrifying impact was like a raging flame, completely tearing Nye Tian's body apart. Bearing the excruciating pain, Nye Tian's face twisted into a sinister expression. He didn't expect that upgrading his life meridians would be so painful. "Lord Beacon Emperor, you must hold on." The Black Emperor looked at Nye Tian and couldn't help but frown. He said solemnly, "I used my own martial path fate pattern to help you attack your life meridians. It's almost like forcefully upgrading your martial path fate pattern." Although this method can upgrade your martial path fate pattern in the shortest time possible, the terrifying pain is unimaginable. As long as you can endure it, your life meridians will definitely be upgraded. The Black Emperor's eyes couldn't help but tremble, and his face was filled with unconcealable worry. At this moment, Nye Tian endured the pain and focused all his attention on his 9 life meridians. He carefully sensed the changes in his life meridians and searched for a chance to break through. After an unknown period of time, he felt the violent impact gradually calm down. The power of the life patterns seemed to be absorbed by his life meridians and began to slowly fuse with his life meridians, turning into his own power. It's starting to absorb the power of the life patterns. At this moment, the Black Emperor sensed the changes in Nye Tian's life meridians and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He didn't expect Nye Tian's ability to accept things was so strong. In just half a day, he had overcome the rejection between the martial path fate patterns and began to absorb the power of his life patterns. Every martial artist who possessed a martial Dao life horoscope had a unique life horoscope aura. At this time, Black Emperor used his own martial Dao fate power to condense a life pattern to help Nye Tian forcefully increase the power of his lifeline. Their martial Dao fates were different, so there was a great repulsion between them. The violent impact that Nye Tian felt just now was caused by the repulsion between the martial Dao life providences. Black Tharch originally thought that Nye Tian would have to endure at least a few days of pain before he could overcome the rejection of his martial Dao fate. What he didn't expect was that in less than half a day, Nye Tian had already passed through the rejection period of his martial Dao fate and started to absorb the power of his life pattern. Next, as long as Nye Tian's lifeline completely absorbed the Black Emperor's life pattern power, he would be able to break through to the life pattern realm. Black Emperor looked at Nye Tian with an unconcealable passion in his eyes and exclaimed in his heart, as expected of someone with 9 lifelines. The life gods and demons don't allow it, as expected of the head of the 9 inverse fate matrices. The fact that Nye Tian could fuse with the Fengtian fate art proved that his martial Dao fate was strong enough. However, Nye Tian's martial Dao fate art was much stronger than what Black Emperor had expected. Next, Nye Tian felt the tearing sensation in his lifeline gradually weaken and soon disappeared. What replaced it was a comfortable feeling of increasing power. He could clearly feel that his 9 life veins were becoming stronger at a rapid rate. This feeling of being able to personally feel stronger made him feel an indescribable joy. At this time, Nye Tian felt that his 9 lifelines were like 9 vortexes that were constantly absorbing the power of the life pattern. Once his lifelines absorbed enough life pattern power, it would be the opportunity to break through. Lord Beacon Emperor, you only need to absorb the power of the life pattern to successfully break through, Black Emperor said with a faint smile. However, what happened next was far beyond his expectations. Half a day later, Nye Tian had completely absorbed the power of the life pattern in his lifeline. But the strange thing was that his life vein did not give birth to a life pattern. In other words, he did not break through after absorbing the Black Emperor's life pattern power. How can this be? Black Emperor's eyes narrowed, and he could not help but exclaim in surprise. He was completely dumbfounded. The scene in front of him was something he hadn't expected at all. At that moment, Nye Tian said in a deep voice, "Lord Black Emperor, I can feel that my lifeline hasn't absorbed enough life pattern power." This. Black Emperor's eyes darkened and his face froze when he heard Nye Tian's words. Even with his strength, the power of the life pattern he condensed could not help Nye Tian break through. This was too strange. The only explanation was that Nye Tian's lifeline was too strong, so he needed more life patterns to break through. After a while, Black Emperor calmed down and said, "Lord Beacon Emperor, can you still endure the pain just now?" "Yes." Nye Tian nodded. His face was filled with extreme determination. Since he had already endured the pain, It would be too much of a pity if his lifeline could not break through. Okay. Black Emperor's eyes darkened and he agreed. Then, he condensed the power of the life pattern again and injected it into Nie Tian's lifeline space. Nie Tian's face changed and his heart trembled when he felt the impact of the life pattern. But this time, the tearing feeling was much weaker than before, so he could easily endure it. In the blink of an eye, a day passed and Nie Tian once again absorbed the power of the life pattern. Unfortunately, his lifeline still hadn't broken through. How is this possible? Black Emperor frowned and his face darkened. He could not believe it. He could not imagine that Nie Tian's lifeline was so strong. Nie Tian frowned and said in a low voice, again. Black Emperor's eyes trembled. He sensed Nie Tian's lifeline and made sure that he could still endure it before he started again. This time, he was very careful and did not dare to use too much of the power of the life pattern. It was dangerous to use such a method to forcefully help a cultivator improve their martial path fate. If he was not careful, it could cause the cultivator's lifeline to collapse. Black Emperor could not make a correct assessment of Nie Tian's lifeline, so he had to be more careful. For the third time, Nie Tian only used half a day to completely absorb the power of the life pattern. But again, he did not break through. Then, the fourth time, the fifth time, and the sixth time, when Nie Tian completely absorbed the power of the life patterns, runes that looked like magical symbols appeared on his 9 life meridians. Although they weren't clear, they were there. Chapter 3670. Chapter 3665. Chapter 3665 Knocking on the Door to Challenge Life Pattern. Black Emperor immediately sensed the life pattern on Nie Tian's lifeline. Her eyes trembled and she cried out in surprise. She was so excited that she was about to cry. At this moment, he was already drenched in cold sweat without realizing it. While helping Nie Tian break through, he condensed life patterns again and again. He was even more nervous than Nie Tian. With the power of his martial Dao fate chart, although it was difficult to condense a life pattern, it was nothing. What he was really worried about was Nie Tian's condition. If he wasn't careful and injected too many life patterns, it would directly cause Nie Tian's lifeline to collapse. That would be the Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tian Fate sect. With such a serious consequence, how could he not be nervous? Life pattern. At this time, Nie Tian sensed the first appearance of his life pattern. His closed eyes suddenly opened and he shouted in surprise. After a few days, he absorbed a large amount of life pattern power and finally successfully formed a life pattern. The appearance of the life pattern also announced that Nie Tian's martial Dao fate had advanced from the life vein realm to the life pattern realm. Although it was only a level of difference, there was a world of difference between fate meridians and life patterns. Lifeline represented a martial artist's martial Dao talent. It was also the embodiment of a martial artist's life force. It would greatly enhance a martial artist's martial body. However, the lifeline had no real effect on a martial artist's battle prowess. At the very least, it could not be used directly. But the life pattern was different. The life pattern was a kind of power that could be released. It was equivalent to the power of a bloodline. At the most critical moment, it could push a warrior's strength to the limit. More importantly, the appearance of the life pattern had greatly improved Nie Tian's martial body. Previously, when he used the soul of the sky, the forbidden astral soul, or the sword formation in the sky, the burden on his martial body was extremely heavy, and the backlash was extremely great. If he were to use several powerful forces at the same time, he might even be suppressed by them and be seriously injured. However, now that his martial body had been upgraded, the backlash from these powers would no longer be so obvious to him. At the very least, it would not be able to heavily injure him. After a while, Nie Tian stood up with a smile on his face. His aura was extremely sharp and sharp. Master Beacon Emperor, how do you feel? Black Emperor was much calmer now and asked excitedly. Yes. Nie Tian nodded heavily and said, I can clearly feel that my 9 life veins have become much stronger, and my martial body is also much stronger than before. Black Tharch smiled faintly and nodded in satisfaction. The nervousness in his heart eased significantly as he said, Lord Beacon Emperor, you are a person with 9 life meridians. When your martial Tao life providence slowly becomes stronger, you will understand how much the power of a martial Tao life providence can improve a warrior. Nie Tian nodded with a smile, agreeing with him. There were 6 major realms in the martial Tao fate chart. Fate Meridian, Fate Pattern, Fate Will, Fate Image, Fate Spirit, and Fate Tao. As for Nie Tian, he had only just advanced to the early stage of life pattern. However, he could clearly feel that the life pattern had greatly improved his martial body. At this moment, he felt that the power in his body was about to explode. His martial body was already extremely strong. When his martial Tao life providence realm advanced to a higher realm, he would become an even stronger monster. Master Beacon Emperor, you have just broken through to the life pattern realm. Although you have completely integrated with my life pattern power, there is still some of my life providence aura in my life meridian. At this moment, Black Emperor looked at Nie Tian and said, in the next few days, you will slowly cultivate here and familiarize yourself with the power of the life pattern and stabilize your life pattern realm. Okay. Nie Tian nodded with a smile. His eyes trembled slightly as he said, I will have to trouble you with Lan Zhuing. Don't worry, Master Beacon Emperor. I will definitely help her remove the mark of bliss. Black Emperor smiled faintly. He felt that the fact that Nie Tian was still thinking about Lan Zhuing at this moment meant that the relationship between the two was not simple. Then, Black Emperor left the cultivation room. Nie Tian began to concentrate on cultivating in the cultivation room. The more familiar he was with the power of the life pattern, the more he felt that the power of the martial Tao life pattern was very powerful. 3 days later, Nie Tian rose to his feet, his whole body releasing an incomparably fierce aura. The corner of his mouth twitched, and a rune surged out of his palm, causing his aura to soar a lot. Very good. Nie Tian smiled faintly, obviously very satisfied. At this moment, he could already control the power of the life pattern freely, and he could even release the life pattern to strengthen his aura. However, his life pattern was still in the early stage after all, and it was not very powerful. The increase in his strength was still very limited. Nie Tian, your understanding of the life pattern has exceeded my expectations. At this moment Ghost Emperor's voice was heard, and he exclaimed, This is the first time I've seen someone use only 3 days to control the life pattern so skillfully. Is that a compliment? Nie Tian smiled faintly, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Ghost Emperor laughed, and he did not say anything else. Then, Nie Tian left the cultivation room and went straight to the Black Martial Hall. When he arrived outside the Black Martial Hall, he saw a familiar figure from afar. It was Yen Zun of the 3 Temple. It's this guy. Nie Tian frowned, and his heart sank. He suddenly had an ominous feeling. Yen Zun's appearance in the Black Martial Hall was obviously not a good thing. Then, he immediately saw a red-haired man standing beside Yen Zun. His body was so fat that it was a little exaggerated. He was even rounder than Jean de Bao. From afar, he looked like a round ball. However, although this red-haired man did not look good, he was very strong. He was a 9th Heavenly Mandate Saint Master. Moreover, he looked very young, and his martial arts talent was not any weaker than Yen Wuming's. Lord Black Emperor is right. As expected, Great Emperor 3 won't let the matter rest. It's only been a few days, but he can't take it anymore and directly brought his people to provoke us. Nie Tian looked at Yen Zun and the red-haired man. The corner of his mouth twitched as he said faintly, Brat, you finally appeared. At this moment, Yen Zun saw Nie Tian, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. Terrifying anger surged in his eyes, and his entire body released a chilling killing intent, as if he wanted to skin Nye Tian alive. How could he not be angry when the person who killed his son was right in front of him? If he did not have any rationality left, he would have already rushed up and torn Nye Tian apart. Lord Yen Zun, long time no see. Nye Tian's reaction was very calm at this moment. He walked over with a smile, and looked at Yen Zun playfully. He said, "It's only been a few days and you've already brought people to challenge us?" Chapter 36-71. Blood Ancestors Token. Yen Zun felt Nye Tian's provocation. His eyes darkened and he could barely control his murderous intent. "You know I'm here to challenge you, yet you still dare to show up. You're indeed stubborn." The red-haired man stared at Nye Tian coldly. His eyes were different from the others. They were crimson, like burning flames. However, his eyes were surging with an incomparably chilling, killing intent. "Not only am I stubborn, but I'm also stubborn." Nye Tian smiled calmly. At this moment, Song Nanyu frowned and said indifferently, "Lord Yen, if we have anything to say, let's talk in the hall." He was in charge of receiving Yen Zun. He did not expect Nye Tian to show up at this time. "All right," Yen Zun replied. His cold gaze swept across Nye Tian before he walked into the Black Martial Hall. The red-haired man followed closely behind him. Song Nanyu glanced at Nye Tian, nodded slightly, and walked into the Black Martial Hall. "Nye Tian, this red-haired man is Lai Xingyun. He's one of the 7 princes of the Yin City. He's very strong. If you don't want to fight, I can reject him for you." Song Nanyu transmitted his voice to Nye Tian on the way. "Since he's here, how can I reject him?" Nye Tian replied calmly with a smile. Song Nanyu frowned. He believed in Nye Tian's strength, but he was worried that Nye Tian's body had yet to fully recover. However, he could sense that Nye Tian's martial physique was fine. In fact, his aura was much sharper than before. The group entered the Black Martial Hall and took their seat. The Black Emperor was not in the Black Martial Hall. Yen Zun's status was not enough for the Black Emperor to welcome him. "Yen Zun, tell me why you're here." Song Nanyu frowned and said. "I'm here for 2 things," Yen Zun said in a deep voice. "The first thing is about the handover of the Dark Warrior Mountain Range. It has been so long, but your Black Martial Hall's people have yet to withdraw from the Black Martial Mountain Range. What is the meaning of this? The Black Warrior Mountain Range is so big. There are many Black Warrior Hall cultivators guarding it. It will take some time for us to retreat completely." Song Nanyu narrowed his eyes and said, "Lord Black Emperor said that the Black Martial Hall will withdraw from the Black Martial Mountain Range within 10 days. 10 days? Yen Zun's expression sank. He sneered and said, "Great Monarch 3 also said that the Black Martial Hall must withdraw from the Black Warrior Mountain Range in 3 days at most. 3 days later, if there are still any Black Warrior Hall martial artists remaining in the Black Warrior Mountain Range, kill them without mercy." Song Nanyu's eyes darkened when he heard Yen Zun's words. His expression instantly turned ugly. He hadn't expected the 3 Palace to be so domineering this time. The Black Warrior Mountain Range contained many of the Black Warrior Hall's secret. It was practically impossible to withdraw from the mountain range within 3 days. 7 days. After thinking for a moment, Song Nanyu frowned and said in a deep voice, 3 days. However, Yen Zun did not leave any room for negotiation. His expression was solemn as he uttered each word clearly. 5 days. Song Nanyu frowned and gave in again. 3 days. Yen Zun's eyes darkened. He insisted on 3 days. Yen Zun, don't go overboard with your 3 Palace. Song Nanyu couldn't help but stand up and growl. Overboard. Yen Zun sneered and said, "The Black Emperor personally agreed to give up the Black Warrior Mountain Range. Our 3 Palace is only here to take back what belongs to us. Is this overboard?" "You." Song Nanyu's expression froze. He was momentarily speechless. Although Yen Zun's words were domineering, there was nothing wrong with it. At most, it was a little too overbearing. In 3 days, the 3 Palace martial artists will enter the Black Warrior Mountain Range. If there are any Black Warrior Hall martial artists remaining, bear the consequences. Yen Zun's lips twitched as he said in a cold tone. Song Nanyu's eyes darkened, but there was nothing he could do. The second matter. Yen Zun's eyes flickered as he tossed out a token. The Blood Ancestors token. Song Nanyu's eyes trembled as he caught the token. Yen Zun sneered as his eyes flickered with coldness. Nye Tian frowned as he looked at the blood-colored token in Song Nanyu's hand. He could sense an extremely bloody aura from the token. It was as if the token contained a huge blood-colored abyss. Why did the Blood Ancestors token arrive early this time? Song Nanyu calmed down and asked in a deep voice. You should ask Lord Blood Ancestor about that. Yen Zun raised his eyebrows as he replied in a cold tone. Song Nanyu's eyes darkened as he glanced at Yen Zun. He didn't say anything as he kept the Blood Ancestors token. Nye Tian frowned. He didn't understand what the Blood Ancestors token represented. Why was Song Nanyu so afraid? The Lord Blood Ancestor that Yen Zun mentioned seemed to be an extraordinary character. Song Nanyu frowned and said with a gloomy expression, Yen Zun, I've finished talking about these 2 matters. I won't send you off. Did I say I'm leaving? Yen Zun let out a chuckle. His eyes were filled with coldness as he stared at Nye Tian. He said coldly, the matter with this kid hasn't been settled yet. Yen Zun, what do you mean? Song Nanyu's face darkened. The Black Martial Hall has already given up the Black Warrior Mountain Range. Isn't that enough? Of course not. Yen Zun growled and stood up. His aura was sharp and murderous as he said, This kid killed my son. Do you think I'll let him go? Then what do you want? Song Nanyu also stood up and growled. Lai Xingyun. Yen Zun's eyes darkened as he glanced at Lai Xingyun behind him. Kid, I heard you killed Yen Wuming. Lai Xingyun nodded and took a step forward. I, Lai Xingyun, am not convinced. I've come to challenge you. I hope you won't be a coward. A challenge. This was Yen Zun's main purpose for coming here. Nye Tian looked at Lai Xingyun with a calm expression. He already knew this would happen, so he wasn't surprised at all. He laughed and said, I did kill Yen Wuming, but why should I accept your challenge? Lai Xingyun was startled after hearing Nye Tian's words. He didn't expect the latter to say such a thing. He was stunned for a moment before he sneered, Are you afraid? Humph. Nye Tian's gaze swept over Lai Xingyun as he sneered and said, With all due respect, your strength is not enough to make me fear you. If you're not afraid, why don't you accept the challenge? Lai Xingyun sneered and asked arrogantly. Chapter 36-72. Yang Annihilation? Lai Xingyun looked at Nye Tian in surprise. He immediately understood and smiled coldly. Brat, it seems like you want to play something more exciting. Tell me, what will make you agree to fight? He could obviously tell that it wasn't that Nye Tian didn't want to fight, but that he wanted the benefits of fighting. Song Nanyu was also startled and frowned, not knowing what Nye Tian was thinking. In his opinion, it was best if Nye Tian didn't accept Lai Xingyun's challenge. Very simple. Nye Tian smiled and said, Let's use the Black Warrior Mountain Range as the wager. Black Warrior Mountain Range? Yen Zun, Song Nanyu, and Lai Xingyun exclaimed in shock when they heard Nye Tian mention the Black Warrior Mountain Range. Nye Tian couldn't be thinking that the 3 Temple would give up the Black Warrior Mountain Range if he won, right? However, the Black Warrior Mountain Range was too important. Yen Zun and Lai Xingyun would most likely not agree to such a wager. Don't be nervous. Nye Tian's gaze swept across Yen Zun and Lai Xingyun as he smiled. I only said that if I win, the 3 Temple will give the Black Warrior Hall some time. Half a month, how about it? Half a month? Yen Zun's gaze darkened as he stared coldly at Nye Tian and said, Brat, you're quite daring. What kind of price will you have to pay if you lose? If I lose, you can do whatever you want to me. Moreover, the Black Warrior Hall will immediately retreat from the Black Warrior Mountain Range. Nia Tion's lips twitched as he said with a smile. His eyes were calm and filled with extreme confidence. Little brat, remember what you said. Yen Zun's eyes were burning with excitement, and his face was filled with excitement. Of course. Nia Tian smiled faintly, his face calm and tranquil. However, Kang Nanyu, who was standing off to the side, frowned and said, Nia Tian. It wasn't that he didn't have confidence in Nia Tian, but this bet seemed a little too big. The Black Warrior Mountain Range was not a big deal. However, Nia Tian's identity was extraordinary. If something were to happen to him, it would be troublesome. Lord Southern Reverend, please believe me. Nia Tian looked at Kang Nanyu with a faint smile. Amidst his calmness, there was an overbearing confidence. Sensing Nia Tian's confidence, Song Nanyu's eyes trembled slightly and he was momentarily speechless. After a while, Song Nanyu finally nodded. Very good. Yen Zun's eyes trembled, and he let out a wild laugh. His eyes were like that of a venomous wolf as he stared at Nia Tian and said, Little brat, you're dead meat. Is that so? Nia Tian smiled faintly and raised his eyebrows provocatively. Then, without wasting any time, they left the dark martial hall and leaped into the sky. High up in the sky, Nia Tian and Lai Xingyun were confronting each other in a domineering manner. They were like two wondrous peaks with surging and violent auras. Yen Zun and Song Nanyu stood a distance away and stared at each other. Little brat, do you know that I'm ranked 4th among the 7 great childs of the Yin City? Lai Xingyun stared at Nia Tian and spoke in a deep and insolent tone. It seems like you're not as good as young Master Wu Ming. Nia Tian let out a disdainful laugh. He remembered that Yen Wu Ming was ranked 3rd among the 7 great childs, even higher than Lai Xingyun. Is that so? Lai Xingyun let out a hollow laugh and took a step forward. His aura skyrocketed, and a raging force of fire was unleashed. Instantly, the space within a few 10,000 meters around him turned into a sea of flames, as if it was an endless purgatory, as if the entire heavens and earth were on the verge of burning. Nia Tian's eyes glistened slightly. This Lai Xingyun's aura was stronger than Yen Wu Ming's. Although Lai Xingyun was ranked 4th among the 7 great childs, his strength was stronger than Yen Wu Ming's. As Yen Wu Ming was the son of Yen Zun and had a special identity, his ranking was slightly lower. In terms of actual strength, Lai Xingyun was stronger than Yen Wu Ming. Kid, I know that Yen Wu Ming wasn't killed by you. He was killed by the 3 Yin killing formation. At that instant, Lai Xingyun suddenly transmitted his voice to Nia Tian and said in a cold tone, You were only able to capture Yen Wu Ming because you caught him off guard. Your strongest point should be your martial physique, right? If I didn't give you the chance to approach me, no matter how strong your martial physique is, it's useless if you don't have enough strength. After saying this, the fiery aura emitted from Lai Xingyun's body became even more violent. The flames surged into the sky and spread in all directions, as if they were going to devour everything. Nia Tian frowned his eyebrows as his lips twitched. It seemed like Yen Zun had found out everything, and knew that he wasn't the one who killed Yen Wu Ming. However, Yen Wu Ming's death was indeed closely related to Nia Tian. Lai Xingyun was smart enough to know about Nia Tian beforehand. He knew that Nia Tian's martial physique was extremely strong, thus he unleashed his fiery aura, not giving Nia Tian any chance to approach him. Unfortunately, he didn't know enough about Nia Tian, thus he had no idea how strong Nia Tian was. Lai Xingyun's strength is so strong. Song Nanyu stared at Lai Xingyun and frowned his eyebrows. His expression changed slightly as he started to worry. Meanwhile, Yen Zun wore a gloomy expression, as he firmly believed that Nia Tian would die in Lai Xingyun's hands. Lai Xingyun, you're quite smart, but it's a pity that your little tricks will only bring you harm. At that instant, Nia Tian let out a calm smile, as his eyes flickered with disdain. How arrogant! Lai Xingyun furrowed his eyebrows and let out a low roar. Immediately after, his figure moved. He took a step forward, and the flame power in his body surged, condensing into an enormous fireball in the air. It pressed down on the void and madly bombarded towards Nie Tian. Boom! In the sky, a deafening roar could be heard. The heavens and earth were filled with a blazing aura, as if it was a furnace. Nie Tian felt the fiery aura rushing towards him, but he wasn't afraid at all. Instead, the corner of his mouth twitched, revealing a cold smile. Boom! In the next instant, he took a step forward, and the sword intent that he had accumulated in his body surged out in a frenzy. The soul of the sky was activated, and the sword aura around him skyrocketed in an instant. At the same time, his sword intent contained the power of 9 strange runes. They were the life patterns. At that moment, not only did he use the soul of the sky, but he also used the 9 life patterns. This was his first time using the life patterns, and he wanted to see how strong the power of the life patterns were. Yan Zun looked at Nie Tian, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He had never expected Nie Tian's strength to reach such a level. It seemed that in just a few days, Nie Tian's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. 9 limits of the starry sky, destruction of the sun. At that moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched and he murmured. Then, the sword of the sky slashed across the sky. Suddenly, the sky was pulled taut by a huge force. Then, a huge shadow of the sword appeared, like a mad dragon, and a terrifying aura covered the heavens and earth. At that moment, Lai Xingyun suddenly realized something. His eyes narrowed, and he exclaimed in shock. Boom! At that moment, the shadow of the sword and the fireball collided, and the sky suddenly froze, as if time had stopped. Bang! In the next instant, the shadow of the sword was like a dragon, devouring the scorching sun. The fireball couldn't withstand the power of the sword, and directly collapsed, turning into endless flames that rushed into the sky. Like a raging wave, the flames spread in all directions. Boom! Then, the shadow of the sword rushed out like a ray of light, passing through the endless sea of flames, and pressed down on Lai Xingyun. Chapter 36-73. An accident. Boom boom boom. Violent explosions could be heard continuously in the void. Waves of terrifying energy rolled like raging waves, wreaking havoc in the space as if they wanted to annihilate everything. Yan Zun and Song Nanyu's eyes trembled as they watched the scene before them. Their expressions were dull, and they were clearly shocked to the extreme. They could not imagine that a single strike from Nie Tian could unleash such a terrifying power. As one of the 7 princes, Lai Xingyun's strength was not inferior to Yan Wuming's, but he could not even block a single strike from Nie Tian. This was too terrifying. After a long while, the chaotic void gradually calmed down and a bloody figure appeared in the void. It was Lai Xingyun. You're still alive. Nie Tian's lips twitched as he saw Lai Xingyun's figure. He let out a cold laugh. At this moment, although Lai Xingyun was still alive, he was barely breathing. His entire body was swaying as if he would fall at any time. He was severely injured. All the bones in his body were broken and his body was completely deformed. If it wasn't for the power of his bloodline, he would have been dead by now. You? How are you so strong? Lai Xingyun's pupils abruptly constricted, and his eyes trembled with extreme fear. Clearly, he was extremely afraid. He could not imagine that Nie Tian could be this strong. Nie Tian's cultivation was only at the 8th layer heavenly rhythm. If Nie Tian had the same cultivation as him, wouldn't he be able to kill him with a single strike? He was one of the 7 princes of the Yin City, a top genius in the entire Yin City. However, in front of Nie Tian, he was nothing more than a piece of trash. It's not that I'm too strong, it's that you're too weak. Nie Tian raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. There was an unconcealable arrogance in his calmness. You! Lai Xingyun's eyes trembled as he felt a heavy pressure on his chest. He was speechless. He was a genius martial artist, and this was the first time someone said he was too weak to his face. At that moment, Nie Tian no longer paid any attention to Lai Xingyun. He looked at Yen Zun and said in a loud voice, "Lord Yen Zun, the outcome has already been decided. Don't forget our previous agreement." Yen Zun's face was so gloomy that it looked like it was about to drip blood. His eyes were trembling. After a long time, he roared, "Trash!" He didn't expect Nie Tian's strength to rise to such a level in such a short time. Lai Xingyun's defeat made him truly realize how terrifying Nie Tian was. "Let's go!" Yen Zun's cold gaze swept across Lai Xingyun. Letting out a cold roar, he waved his hand and left with Lai Xingyun. He really left just like that. Song Nanyu stared at the place where Yen Zun and Lai Xingyun disappeared with a blank expression. At this moment, he felt like he was in a dream. It was unbelievable. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never believe that one of the 7 young masters, Lai Xingyun, would be defeated by Nie Tian with a single sword strike. Life patterns are indeed good stuff. The increase in my strength is greater than I expected. Nie Tian's lips twitched as he thought to himself. This was the first time he used life patterns after he had nurtured them. He didn't expect the power of life patterns to be so terrifying. After releasing the power of the 9 life patterns, coupled with the soul in the sky, his martial body and sword intent were pushed to an unprecedented level. Because of this, he could defeat Lai Xingyun with a single sword strike. "Lord Beacon Emperor, are you all right?" At this moment, Song Nanyu came to Nie Tian's side and asked with a slightly nervous expression. When there was no one else around, he didn't dare to call Nie Tian by his name. Instead, he respectfully addressed him as Lord Beacon Emperor. "I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly with a calm expression. In the previous sword strike, he had used 9 life patterns, causing his life aura to weaken slightly. His entire person seemed a little tired. However, he would be able to recover after a little rest. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and asked with a faint smile, "Nanzuan, what is the token that Yen Zun gave you?" "It's the Blood Ancestors token." When Song Nanyu heard Nie Tian's question, his eyes trembled and he seemed to be a little flustered. He then calmed down and replied with a smile. "What is the Blood Ancestors token?" Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but ask. Seeing Song Nanyu's flustered expression and even a little fearful, he couldn't help but be curious. "It's nothing, it's just a token." Song Nanyu forced a smile, as if he didn't want Nie Tian to know too much. Nie Tian frowned. He knew that Song Nanyu didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask any further. Subsequently, Nie Tian learned from Song Nanyu that the Black Emperor was trying to remove the Extreme Bliss brand on Lan Zhuiying. He was a little worried and went to check on it. A moment later, Song Nanyu brought Nie Tian to a cultivation room in the dark martial hall. Lord Beacon Emperor, Master and Miss Lan are in the cultivation room. I will inform Master that Lord Beacon Emperor has arrived. Song Nanyu bowed slightly towards Nie Tian in an extremely respectful manner. "No need, let's wait here." Nie Tian reached out to stop Song Nanyu and said with a faint smile. He was worried that he would disturb the Black Emperor, so it was better to stand there and wait. "Yes." Song Nanyu nodded and stood respectfully beside Nie Tian. The two waited outside the cultivation room for a few hours, but the Black Emperor and Lan Zhuiying still didn't come out. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown with a worried expression. Boom! At that moment, the heavy stone door of the cultivation room suddenly opened. The Black Emperor walked out from the cultivation room. His face was pale and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. When Nie Tian saw the Black Emperor, he couldn't help but tremble. He used his divine sense to check the Black Emperor's divine sense and found that the latter's divine sense was a little unstable. It seemed that the Black Emperor had just used up a large amount of mental energy. What was even stranger was that only the Black Emperor had come out. Lan Zhuing was nowhere to be seen. "Master, are you all right?" Song Nanyu saw the Black Emperor's pale expression and quickly stepped forward to ask anxiously. "I'm just a little tired. I'm fine." The Black Emperor forced a smile and then looked at Nie Tian with a strange expression. "Lord Black Emperor, is Lan Zhuing all right?" Nie Tian asked anxiously, thinking that something had happened to Lan Zhuing. "Lord Beacon Emperor, don't worry. Miss Lan is fine. She's just temporarily unconscious. She'll need a few days to wake up." The Black Emperor nodded slightly. Although he said that he was fine, the expression on his face became even more terrible. "Lord Black Emperor, is the matter of removing the brand of bliss not going well?" Nie Tian calmed down and asked the Black Emperor. "Yes." The Black Emperor nodded and frowned deeply. When Nie Tian saw the Black Emperor's expression, his heart sank. Chapter 36-74. Ancestor Blood Soul, Lord Onyx Emperor, what is going on? Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he calmed down and asked the Onyx Emperor. The Onyx Emperor frowned and let out a long sigh. "Things have gone beyond my expectations. I thought that the brand of bliss in Miss Lan's body was merely a spiritual imprint. But that is not the case." Nie Tian frowned and his heart sank. "When I was removing the brand of bliss for Miss Lan, I realized that there was a terrifying curse imprint hidden within." The Onyx Emperor's face darkened. Miss Lan was fused with the brand of bliss when she was born. The imprint has become one with her soul and has almost become part of her bloodline. It is very difficult to remove a brand like this. If one is not careful, one's soul could be harmed. What is more troublesome is that there is a curse imprint hidden within the imprint. Moreover, the curse imprint is fused with the soul and bloodline. If one tries to remove it by force, it will be dangerous. At this point, the Black Emperor paused and did not continue. "What kind of danger?" Nie Tian frowned and asked. "The imprint and curse imprint are fused with the soul and bloodline. Removing it by force will cause irreversible damage to the soul and bloodline." The Onyx Emperor paused for a long time before continuing. "Even if one successfully removes the imprint and curse imprint, it will cause her soul to collapse and she will become an idiot." Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "Idiot!" He did not expect the brand of bliss to be this complicated. From the looks of it, he had thought too simply about this matter. Nie Tian stood rooted to the ground and did not speak for a long time. "Lord Beacon Emperor, your subordinate's perception of the imprint was wrong. I have disappointed Lord Beacon Emperor." The Onyx Emperor looked at Nie Tian and spoke in a low voice. Nie Tian forced a smile. "This has nothing to do with you. We have all underestimated the brand of bliss." Black Emperor nodded and did not say anything else. Then, Nie Tian entered the training room and checked on Lan Zhuing. The latter was in a coma and had consumed a lot of her spiritual power. She would need a few days to wake up. Is she going to live with the brand and curse for the rest of her life? Nie Tian looked at Lan Zhuing with a gloomy gaze. He felt a dull pain in his heart. If Lan Zhuing could not remove the brand of bliss, she would have to face the endless pursuit of the realm of bliss and the realm of evil. With her strength, it was impossible for her to escape every time. Thinking of this, Nie Tian's expression became even gloomier. After a while, he walked out of the cultivation platform and looked at the Black Emperor with a burning gaze. He asked, "Lord Black Emperor, is there really no way to remove the brand?" The Black Emperor furrowed his brows. He looked like he was in a difficult position. He remained silent for a long time. Nie Tian could tell that the Black Emperor was in a difficult position. He shook his head and did not force the issue. "Lord Beacon Emperor, perhaps there is someone in the underworld who can help Miss Lan remove the brand of bliss," said the Black Emperor with a frown. His eyes flickered with a strange light. "Who?" Nie Tian's eyes flickered when he heard the Black Emperor's words. He cried out in surprise. Ancestor Blood Soul. The Black Emperor frowned. He paused for a moment before uttering a name. Ancestor Blood Soul. Song Nanyu's eyes widened in shock when he heard this name. His expression abruptly changed, as if he had heard something extremely terrifying, and he let out a cry of shock. Nie Tian glanced at Song Nanyu and frowned. It seemed like the Ancestor Blood Soul that the Black Emperor had mentioned was an extremely terrifying person. Otherwise, Song Nanyu would not have reacted in such a manner. Black Emperor, who is the Ancestor Blood Soul? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He calmed himself down and asked the Black Emperor. The supreme expert of the underworld. The ruler of the entire underworld. The Black Emperor said in a deep voice. His eyes trembled slightly. Then, he briefly told Nie Tian about the Ancestor Blood Soul. The entire underworld was controlled by a force called the Blood Soul Sect. The Ancestor Blood Soul was the sect leader of the Blood Soul Sect. In the underworld, the Ancestor Blood Soul was the supreme existence. He was the strongest person. As for how strong he really was, no one knew. The Ancestor Blood Soul can really help Lan Zhuing remove the brand of bliss? Nie Tian frowned and asked after hearing the Black Emperor's words. A long time ago, I was fortunate enough to meet the Blood Soul Ancestor once. His divine soul is the strongest of all the warriors I have ever seen, the Black Emperor said in a deep voice. He had seen true experts before. Among them, Ancestor Blood Soul might not be the strongest, but his divine soul was the most terrifying. The Black Emperor was an expert in formations. He was a formation grandmaster. Hence, his mind power and spiritual soul were much stronger than ordinary warriors. However, compared to Patriarch Blood Soul, his divine soul was like a small ditch, while the other was like a vast ocean. How can I find Patriarch Blood Soul? Nie Tian's eyes shone with a hint of eagerness. Since he knew that the Ancestor Blood Soul could help Lan Zhuing remove the brand of bliss, he had to find him. You won't be able to find him. The Black Emperor shook his head and said, The Ancestor Blood Soul is the supreme existence of the entire underworld. Of course, not everyone can meet him. Even I wouldn't be able to meet with Ancestor Blood Soul. This. Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. With Patriarch Blood Soul's status, it was indeed not easy to meet him. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian asked with a grim look in his eyes, Lord Black Emperor, is there really no way for me to see Patriarch Blood Soul? No. The Black Emperor shook his head helplessly. Even though Nie Tian was the Beacon Emperor, he could not meet the Ancestor Blood Soul. Master, there is an opportunity for Master Beacon Emperor to meet the Ancestor Blood Soul. Kang Nanyu, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stepped forward and said cautiously, What? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he shouted excitedly. Could it be? The Black Emperor frowned and suddenly thought of something. His expression changed and he did not finish his sentence. The Ancestor Blood's token. Suddenly, Nie Tian thought of something and shouted at Kang Nanyu. Kang Nanyu's eyes trembled and his expression changed. He looked at the Black Emperor in panic and did not dare to speak. Nonsense. The Black Emperor's expression darkened and he growled, Absolutely not. Kang Nanyu's expression changed and he lowered his head, not daring to make a sound. Chapter 3675. Chapter 3670. Chapter 3679. Cores of Heaven and Earth. Nie Tian stared at the Black Monarch, his eyes burning with passion without blinking. However, the Black Tharch turned around to avoid his gaze. Black Emperor, I'm asking you a question. Nie Tian's eyes darkened and he said in a cold tone, As the Beacon Emperor, I order you to tell me how I can meet Ancestor Blood Soul. Every single word he spoke was resolute and carried a resolute tone. This. Black Emperor's expression was ugly as he said, Lord Beacon Emperor, please don't make things difficult for me. If something were to happen to you, I wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. I've been through a lot more than you can imagine. Nie Tian frowned and said, Tell me now, what is the blood token used for? Otherwise, I'll go to the Temple of Three Yin. I think Yamazun and the others will be very happy to see me. Lord Beacon Emperor, this. The Black Emperor was taken aback and his face turned ugly. The Three Yin Temple should also have the blood ancestor token. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Even if you don't tell me, I will definitely find out. All right. The Black Emperor remained silent for a long time before he finally sighed and said, The blood ancestral token is the proof that the Blood Soul Gate gives to the major forces in the Yin world to participate in the Blood Soul Road. Road of Blood Soul? Nie Tian was stunned and asked, Is it a martial arts competition? It's not exactly a martial arts competition, but it's crueler than a martial arts competition. The Black Emperor furrowed his brows and said, Rumor has it that the Blood Soul Road is a saint artifact personally refined by the Blood Soul Ancestor. When the Blood Soul Road opens, the Blood Soul Ancestor will personally test all the participants and then select the talented ones to join the Blood Soul sect. Nie Tian frowned, feeling a little puzzled. The Blood Soul Path sounded like a martial arts competition, but such a competition allowed the major factions of the underworld to select geniuses to participate. Then, these geniuses who passed the test would join the Blood Soul sect. Wasn't this equivalent to the various factions of the underworld giving their talented cultivators to the Blood Soul Gate? In that case, the various factions could choose cultivators who were not very talented or strong to participate in the Bloody Soul Road. That way, they would be able to reduce their losses in strength. Every time the Blood Soul Path opens, the Blood Soul sect will send out a Blood Soul envoy to test the strength of the participants. If you don't meet their standards, you won't be allowed to participate. The Black Emperor saw Nie Tian's doubt and said with a bitter smile, So that's how it is. Nie Tian laughed and said, I'll take part in the Blood Soul Road this time. Lord Beacon Emperor, you mustn't. The Black Emperor frowned, clearly panicking. He said, The Blood Soul Road is extremely dangerous. Those warriors who do not pass the test will die on the Blood Soul Road, and those who pass the test will stay in the Blood Soul sect forever. Nie Tian frowned and said, Even if that's the case, I must participate. This. The Black Emperor's face was filled with shock, and she was at a loss for words. Of course, he could tell that Nie Tian was not the kind of person who would be easily changed. Since he had already made a decision, it would be difficult to change. This time, things were troublesome. It seems that the lady called Lan Zhuiying is really important to Lord Beacon Emperor. The Black Emperor frowned as he looked at Nie Tian and thought to himself. What he didn't know was that Nie Tian and Lan Zhuiying had only met by chance, and they could only be considered friends. Don't worry, Black Emperor. I will definitely pass the Blood Soul Road. Moreover, a small Blood Soul sect will not be able to trap me, Nie Tian said to the Black Emperor with a faint smile. The Black Emperor frowned and his face was gloomy. He did not say anything. Now, he could only hope that the people of the Blood Soul sect looked down on Nie Tian and would not allow him to participate in the Blood Soul Road. However, the possibility of this was close to zero. With Nie Tian's talent, he would definitely be chosen by the Blood Soul sect as long as he revealed a little of his strength. It's decided. Now we just have to wait for the people of the Blood Soul sect to come. Nie Tian was very happy. He wanted to see what kind of person the Blood Soul Ancestor, whom the Black Emperor highly respected, was. Lord Beacon Emperor, your sword essence is different from ordinary people. Previously, I saw the sword that you used. Although its aura was the same as yours, it did not seem like your Yuan Ling sword. After a while, the Black Emperor seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Nie Tian and asked, What is the name of the sword? The sword is called the Sky Sword. It is indeed not my Yuan Ling sword. Nie Tian looked at the Black Emperor, not knowing why the latter would suddenly ask about this. However, the Black Emperor's senses were indeed very terrifying. He could actually sense that the Sky Sword was not his Yuanling sword. The Sky Sword. Upon hearing this name, the Black Emperor's expression flickered involuntarily. The look in his eyes as he looked at Nie Tian changed into one of panic. "Are you all right, Black Emperor?" Nie Tian frowned when he saw the Black Emperor's expression. "Lord Beacon Emperor, could your Sky Sword have been born from the heart of the sky?" The Black Emperor paused for a while before he asked in shock. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he couldn't help but nod. He did not expect the Black Emperor to know about the heart of the sky and that the Sky Sword had been born from the heart of the sky. The Black Emperor looked at Nie Tian and his eyes narrowed. He shouted in a shrill voice, "You are the master of the sky." He did not expect that Nie Tian was not only the Beacon Emperor, but also the master of the sky. Nie Tian frowned and his expression changed. He was surprised that the Black Emperor seemed to know the heart of the sky very well. Song Nanyu was confused. He had no idea what Nie Tian and the Black Emperor were talking about. After a while, the Black Emperor calmed down a little, but he still could not believe Nie Tian's words. He asked in a deep voice, "Lord Beacon Emperor, do you really have the heart of the sky in your body?" Nie Tian nodded calmly and said with a smile, "Black Emperor, are you familiar with the heart of the sky? You really are the master of the sky." The Black Emperor's eyes flickered as he let out a cry of surprise. His face froze for a long time before he came back to his senses. He looked at Nie Tian and said, "I didn't expect the Beacon King to have another identity." The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, "I'm the Star Sacred Leader." He did not say it out loud as he was afraid of scaring the Black Emperor. "Black Emperor, how do you know about the heart of the sky?" Nie Tian asked after the Black Emperor calmed down. He was curious as to how the Black Emperor knew about the heart of the sky. "I have only heard about the heart of the sky. I do not know much about it." The Black Emperor forced a smile and said, "I only know that the heart of the sky is one of the 9 hearts of the heavens and earth. It is a sacred item that has existed since the creation of the heavens and earth." 9 hearts of the heavens and earth. Nie Tian's expression changed when he heard the Black Emperor's words. "I knew it. The heart of the sky was not alone. It had other similar powers. 9 hearts of the heavens and earth." Nie Tian guessed that the heavenly demon heart, the heavenly sacred heart, and the Bodhi Buddhist heart belonged to the 9 hearts of the heavens and earth. Chapter 3676. Out of control upon hearing the Black Emperor's name, Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he exclaimed, "Patriarch Blood Soul." He didn't expect the Blood Soul ancestor to be a cultivator with the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. Eyebrows furrowed, the Black Emperor fixed Nie Tian with a grim expression. Until now, he was still in shock. Nie Tian was the legendary ruler of the sky. Though he didn't know much about the heart of the sky, he knew that the 9 hearts were extremely powerful. They were sacred items that were born at the beginning of the world. The power contained within them was unimaginable. The Black Emperor didn't know if the young Beacon Emperor possessing the heart of the sky was a good or bad thing for the Fengtian Fate sect. Regardless, he would do his best to help Nie Tian. This was his duty as the Sky Beacon Priest. "Black Emperor, are you sure that the Blood Soul ancestor possesses the 9 hearts of heaven and earth?" After a while, Nie Tian became cold and asked the Black Emperor. "I'm not sure." The Black Emperor frowned. "This is a rumor in the underworld, but no one knows if it's true or not. However, I believe that the Blood Soul ancestor possesses the 9 hearts of heaven and earth." "Why?" Nie Tian asked in a deep voice. "I've seen the Blood Soul ancestor before. His soul is far stronger than a normal cultivator's." The Black Emperor's eyes trembled and his expression became strange. "I believe that the Blood Soul ancestor's soul is so strong because of the 9 hearts of heaven and earth." Nie Tian nodded and didn't say anything else. If the Blood Soul ancestor truly possessed the 9 hearts of heaven and earth, then it might not be a bad thing. At least, Nye Tian could find out more about the 9 hearts through the Blood Soul ancestor. Beacon Emperor, are you sure you want to participate in the path of the Blood Soul? The Black Emperor looked at Nye Tian and asked cautiously. Nye Tian nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." The Black Emperor smiled bitterly and nodded. He knew that Nye Tian had already made up his mind, and there was no point in trying to persuade him. Next, Nye Tian left and returned to the cultivation room that Black Emperor had arranged for him. It would take some time for the Blood Soul path to open. He wanted to seize the time to cultivate and try to break through to the 9th stage of Heavenly Charm. He still hadn't fully absorbed the power of the 9 stars Heavenly Wolf. As long as he could absorb it, it wouldn't be hard for him to reach the 9th stage of Heavenly Charm. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Nye Tian walked out of the cultivation room. His aura was sharp and his momentum was much stronger than before. Unfortunately, he still hadn't broken through to the 9th layer of Heavenly Rhythm. Nye Tian, your martial body is even more terrifying than some low-level Sage Monarch Tianyi expert. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice rang out, "A strong martial body can indeed increase your combat strength by a lot, but in this way, the power you need to break through every time is far more than a martial artist of the same level." Nye Tian nodded and smiled bitterly. "It's very difficult for me to break through, but once I do, the increase in power is also very powerful. It can be said that there are gains and losses." Looking at the time, Lan Zhuiying should be awake by now. Nye Tian murmured and went to Lan Zhuiying's cultivation room. A moment later, he arrived outside the cultivation room. "Sir Beacon King, Miss Lan is awake. Come in." The Dark Emperor's voice came after he stood still. The stone door of the cultivation room slowly opened. Nye Tian strode into the cultivation room and saw the Black Emperor and Lan Zhuiying standing there. Both of them had dark expressions on their faces. Upon seeing Nye Tian, Lan Zhuiying called out, as if she wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. "Nye Tian. Are you alright, Lan Zhuiying?" Nye Tian noticed that Lan Zhuiying's expression wasn't normal. His eyes flickered and he looked somewhat nervous. "I'm fine." Lan Zhuiying nodded, but she didn't look fine at all. "Black Emperor, what happened?" Nye Tian's heart sank and asked the Black Emperor. "Lord Beacon Emperor, something happened to Miss Lan." Black Emperor sighed and said in a deep voice, "When I was trying to remove Lady Lan's blissful seal, I accidentally activated the seal hidden within it. Now that the seal has been activated, Miss Lan's body is under great pressure. She can't take it anymore." Nye Tian frowned and looked at Lan Zhuiying. He scanned her body with his divine sense and sensed a strange power moving in her body. It was extremely terrifying. Nye Tian could even see that under Lan Zhuiying's skin, there were protrusions as if there were ants moving. Although Lan Zhuiying's energy had recovered, her face was very pale. It was obvious that she was suppressing the pain. Nye Tian frowned as he looked at the Black Emperor and asked, "Can the seal be suppressed?" "No." The Black Emperor shook his head and said, "Moreover, the power of the seal will continue to grow stronger. It won't be long before the seal's power reaches an unbearable level." Nye Tian's face darkened. He looked at Lan Zhuiying and sensed that the seal's power in her body was slowly becoming stronger. It was then that he realized the seriousness of the matter. Face grim, Nye Tian pondered in silence for a long while before asking, "How much longer do we have?" "I've temporarily controlled the seal for Miss Lan, but it's up to her how long she can last." The Black Emperor glanced at Lan Zhuiying and said, "I estimate that the seal will be completely out of control in at least 1 to 3 months. 1 month. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and his face darkened. He originally wanted to save Lan Zhuiying and remove the bliss seal, but he didn't expect things to develop to this point. The Black Emperor's face darkened and he didn't say anything. He was the one who removed the seal for Lan Zhuiying, so one could imagine how he felt at that moment. "Nye Tian, I'm fine." At this time, Lan Zhuing walked over and said with a faint smile, "From the day I left High Paradise, I knew that I wouldn't be able to live for long. Now that I know you, it's enough for me." Nie Tian's eyes flickered and his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. The more Lan Zhuing said, the more his heart ached. "Lan Zhuing, don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you." Nie Tian calmed down and said with a smile. His eyes were firm again. He must save Lan Zhuing even if there was only 1 month left. As long as he could see the Blood Soul ancestor, and ask him to remove the seal for Lan Zhuing would be fine. "Master, the Blood Soul envoy is here." Song Nanyu appeared next to the Black Emperor and said urgently. Chapter 36-77. Arrogant provocation. Ye Tian and the Black Emperor were surprised to hear that the Blood Soul messengers had arrived, but the look in their eyes was different. The worry in the Black Emperor's eyes was more obvious, but Nie Tian was very excited. After a while, the Black Emperor looked at Nie Tian and Lan Zhuing and frowned. He said in a deep voice, "Nanyu, bring them over." "Yes," Song Nanyu replied and left with Nie Tian and Lan Zhuing. The Black Emperor looked at the figures of Nie Tian and the others with a gloomy face, unable to conceal his worry. It was impossible to stop Nie Tian from participating in the Blood Soul Road. At this moment, he could only hope that everything went smoothly. After a while, Song Nanyu and the others arrived at the square outside the Black Martial Hall. From afar, Nie Tian saw 2 martial artists in black standing on the square, waiting for them. The 2 martial artists in black were an old man with gloomy eyes and an arrogant young man. At this moment, they were looking at them with a scrutinizing gaze. Song Nanyu brought Nie Tian, Lan Zhuing, and a few other martial artists to the square. He bowed slightly to the 2 martial artists in a very respectful manner. These 2 were the Blood Soul messengers of the Blood Soul sect. They were here for the Blood Soul Road. The Blood Soul sect was an overlord in the entire underworld and the absolute ruler of the underworld. Even though Song Nanyu was the Southern Reverend of the Black Martial Hall, he had to show respect at this moment. "Southern Reverend, where is the Black Emperor?" At this moment the young martial artist spoke. He looked at Song Nanyu and asked in a cold voice. He seemed very unhappy. "I'm sorry, but Lord Black Emperor has some matters to attend to and cannot meet the 2 messengers." Song Nanyu bowed slightly and said cautiously. "What matters?" The young martial artist's eyes darkened and he sneered. "I heard that the Black Emperor and the 3 Great Emperor exchanged a palm strike not long ago. Could it be that the Black Emperor is too heavily injured and cannot meet anyone?" His voice was cold, fierce, and sharp, and it revealed undisguised ridicule. "Lord Envoy must be joking. Lord Black Emperor indeed has matters to attend to. Please forgive him." Song Nanyu frowned. He was clearly a little angry, but he still spoke patiently. "Humph!" The young martial artist sneered and said, "That old bastard Black Emperor actually dares to put on airs in front of this young master. He's really shameless." Song Nanyu's face darkened to the extreme when he heard the young cultivator's words. There was an unconcealable rage in his cold expression. "What, are you not convinced?" The young martial artist looked at Kang Nanyu and sneered. His arrogance was extremely arrogant as he said, "If you don't like it, then hit me." "You!" Song Nanyu's face darkened. He felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his chest, rendering him speechless. If not for the other party's identity, he would have already made his move. "Trash!" The young martial artist sneered and no longer looked at Song Nanyu. "Young Master Hui, let's get down to business." At this time, the old man walked up and smiled at Song Nanyu. "I am Zhu Xiu, an elder of the Blood Soul Gate. This is Sang Hui. You can call him Young Master Hui. We will be in charge of the Blood Soul Gate selection in the Yin City." Song Nanyu nodded slightly. His tensed face relaxed a little. This old man called Zhu Xiu was obviously much more mature than Sang Hui. However, Zhu Xiu's attitude towards Sang Hui was very cautious and even a trace of fear. This meant that Sang Hui's identity was not simple. Then, Zhu Xiu and Sang Hui's gazes landed on Nie Tian's group. They kept sizing them up as if they were selecting good. Nie Tian frowned slightly. He did not like this feeling. Nan Zun, are these the geniuses of your Black Martial Hall? At this time, Sang Hui sneered with a disdainful and provocative look. They are the strongest young martial artists of the Black Martial Hall. Song Nanyu's eyes darkened as he said coldly. The strongest. The corner of Sang Hui's mouth twitched disdainfully. Are you saying that everyone from the Black Martial Hall is trash? How dare you say that you are the strongest with just a few pieces of trash? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed, his face grim. The other martial artists also had ugly expressions. They were obviously suppressing their anger. According to the rules of the Blood Soul Path, one Blood Ancestors token could allow 3 martial artists to participate. Apart from Nie Tian and Lan Zhuing, Song Nanyu had chosen 4 martial artists. 2 of them were from the Yin City's 7 princes. Their strength was already at the advanced level of the Heavenly Mandate realm. However, Sang Hui had said that such strength was trash. Nie Tian suppressed his anger and did not flare up. Nan Zun, the strength of the others is not bad. What's going on with this woman and this silver-haired kid? At this time, Zhu Xiu stood up and glanced coldly at Lan Zhuing and Nie Tian. When he looked at Nie Tian, his undisguised disdain made him seem extremely cold. A mere 8th-tier heavenly charm holy disciple. Lord Nan Zun is really something. Sang Hui sneered. Is Lord Nan Zun looking down on the Black Martial Hall? Or is he looking down on the Blood Soul Gate? Song Nanyu's face paled. He didn't know what to say. At this moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. With a faint smile, he stepped forward and said, Lord Elder, young Lord Hui, do you think I'm too weak? What do you think? Sang Hui sneered. His eyes were full of disdain. I think I'm stronger than you, Nie Tian said calmly, looking at Sang Hui with an indifferent expression. What did you say? Sang Hui furrowed his brows and immediately laughed. Brat, are you here to make fun of me? He was a 9th-tier Heavenly Mandate Saint Master while Nie Tian was only an 8th-tier Heavenly Charm Holy Disciple. If this wasn't a joke, then what was? I said I am stronger than you. Nie Tian smiled. There was an unconcealable dominance in his calmness. Brat, you are looking to die. Sang Hui's eyes darkened as murderous intent flashed through them. Nie Tian looked at Sang Hui, the corner of his mouth twitching as he said, One sword strike. What did you say? Sang Hui frowned. I only need 1 sword to defeat you. Nie Tian raised an eyebrow and raised a finger. His eyes were full of disdain and provocation. Brat, you've angered me. Sang Hui's face darkened as he looked at Nie Tian. He could feel the disdain in the latter's eyes. Come. Nie Tian, however, was as calm as ever. With a faint smile, he stomped the ground and shot up into the sky. Like a sharp sword, he stood tall in the sky. Chapter 36-78. Who's gonna be funny? High up in the sky, Nie Tian and Sang Hui stood opposite each other. Their auras surged in the air, stirring up strong gales. When the others saw this, their expressions changed. They sucked in a breath of cold air and were speechless. No one had expected that Nie Tian would actually fight Sang Hui. Although this brat is not strong, his courage is not small. He is really not afraid of death. Zhu Xiu looked at the 2 people in the sky and the corners of his mouth twitched as he muttered to himself. He didn't know much about Nie Tian, but he knew Sang Hui very well. This guy wasn't a kind person. His actions had always been ruthless and decisive. Nie Tian had offended Sang Hui and was already a dead man. On the other hand, Song Nanyu's expression was completely different from Zhu Xiu's. His face was tense, and it was clear that he was extremely nervous and worried. Zhu Xiu glanced at Song Nanyu and said with a faint smile, He's just a holy disciple. So what if he's dead? There's no need for Lord Nan Zun to care. Song Nanyu sighed and did not speak. Zhu Xiu didn't know that Song Nanyu wasn't worried about Nie Tian, but Sang Hui. Song Nanyu had personally witnessed Nie Tian heavily injuring Lai Xingyun with a single sword strike. He had full confidence in Nie Tian's strength. Sang Hui wasn't weak, but he was still a bit weaker than Lai Xingyun. Most importantly, Sang Hui did not understand Nie Tian at all, so he would definitely attack carelessly. Under such circumstances, Nie Tian would definitely be able to kill him with one strike. If Nie Tian really killed Sang Hui, then there would be big trouble. No matter how arrogant Sang Hui was, he was still a member of the Blood Soul sect. Furthermore, from Zhu Xiu's attitude towards him, his identity was not simple. If he were to die at the hands of Nie Tian, the entire Dark Martial Hall would suffer a calamity. When he thought of this, Song Nanyu couldn't help but feel even more nervous, and the aura throughout his body started to surge as he prepared to attack. Nan Zun, don't be rash. But at this moment, Zhu Xiu let out a sinister smile and unleashed his aura, locking onto Song Nanyu. It was obvious that he would not allow Song Nanyu to interfere in the battle between Sang Hui and Nie Tian. Song Nanyu frowned as beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Zhu Xiu completely ignored him. His eyes emitted a cold light as he looked at the two figures high up in the sky. High up in the sky, Nie Tian stood calmly. There was a faint smile on his lips and his eyes were emotionless. Brat, you're dead meat. Sang Hui's eyes were filled with killing intent. With a roar, his aura surged madly, causing the surroundings to tremble. Make your move. You only have one chance. Nie Tian smiled faintly, provoking him. Courting death. His words completely infuriated Sang Hui. The latter roared and unleashed his aura. His figure moved in an instant, and with one step, a violent force gathered in the sky. A terrifying palm shadow appeared, and like a collapsing mountain, it rushed towards Nie Tian. Zhu Xiu's lips twitched coldly when he saw this scene. He could already see the scene of Nie Tian being blasted to death. Everyone else's eyes trembled and their nerves were stretched taut. They didn't even dare to blink, afraid that they would miss something. Nie Tian stood still in midair, like a boulder in the middle of a raging storm, completely motionless. His eyes were resolute, without the slightest fluctuation. Boom! Just as the giant palm in the sky was about to land, Nie Tian's lips twitched slightly. Then, sword will erupted from his body and rushed out in a frenzy. Suddenly, the surrounding space trembled, as if the heavens and earth were about to be torn apart by this huge force. 1. In the next moment, an infinite amount of sword will gathered in the sky and formed a giant sword shadow. Like a giant dragon, it let out an intense sword cry that pierced through the clouds and cracked rocks. At this moment, everyone felt the sword's vibrations in the sky. Their eyes widened in shock, and the shock in their hearts was perfectly displayed on their faces. Nobody thought that Nie Tian would be able to explode with such a terrifying sword's will in an instant. Kaboom! At this moment, the sword shadow and the gigantic palm collided together, causing the entire space to tremble. An incomparably violent force erupted forth, gushing out in all directions. In an instant, violent waves towered up into the sky, surging with killing intent. The terrifying force wreaked havoc, like 10,000 beasts galloping, wanting to devour the entire heaven and earth. Bang! In the next moment, the giant palm could not withstand the power of the sword shadow. In the sky, it trembled and collapsed. No. Sang Hui immediately felt that something was wrong. His eyes trembled and he screamed. At this moment, he felt the aura of death. However, it was all too late. Like a dragon, the sword shadow whizzed across the sky and engulfed Sang Hui's figure. The shocking scene caused everyone's eyes to tremble. Then, they were all stunned and petrified. The scene was dead silent. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the sky in utter shock. Who would have thought that Nye Tian would kill Sang Hui with a single strike of his sword? This. Zhu Xiu stared at the sky. His eyes trembled and his face was completely blank. He never thought that Sang Hui would be defeated by Nye Tian. Sang Hui was not strong, but his father was one of the 6 hall leaders of the Blood Soul Hall. Therefore, his status was extremely noble. Now that he had died in the Black Martial Hall, his father would not let him go. Oh no! Kang Nanyu's eyes narrowed and he screamed in his heart. His face was pale with fear. In the end, Nye Tian couldn't restrain himself from killing Sang Hui. As a result, the Black Martial Hall was in big trouble. At this moment, the sword intent in the sky gradually dissipated. A terrified and shrill voice rang out. Then, a figure appeared in front of everyone. It was Sang Hui. Young Master Hui. Zhu Xiu's eyes trembled when he saw Sang Hui's figure. He was on the verge of tears of joy. Sang Hui was not dead. This made him feel as if he had risen from hell to heaven. If Sang Hui had died, the Black Martial Hall would not be the only one to suffer. Even he, an elder, would be implicated. How could he not be happy when he saw that Sang Hui was still alive? He's not dead? Kang Nanyu's eyes trembled when he saw that Sang Hui was still alive. His voice trembled and he almost jumped up. The others were also stunned. They did not expect Sang Hui to still be alive. It was a miracle that Sang Hui was still alive after being hit by the sword shadow. Young Master Hui, let me ask you, who is the Joker here? Nye Tian spoke with a faint smile. There was a strong sense of provocation and mockery in his calm voice. The reason why Sang Hui did not die was not because his martial body was strong, but because Nye Tian had shown mercy. Otherwise, even if Sang Hui had 10 lives, he would be dead by now. Bastard, you deserve to die. Sang Hui's eyes trembled. His gaze toward Nye Tian was filled with endless killing intent. He roared like a ferocious beast. However, he did not move because he was afraid. He knew that he was no match for Nye Tian. Idiot! Nye Tian looked at Sang Hui and smirked cold. He could not be bothered with Sang Hui and turned to leave. Zhu Xiu, kill this bastard for me. Sang Hui's eyes were filled with anger. He suddenly looked at Zhu Xiu and roared crazily. Chapter 36-79. Who do you think you are? Zhu Xiu stared at Nye Tian from afar. His old face was extremely gloomy and his eyes were filled with undisguised murderous intent. His eyes locked onto Nye Tian as the corners of his lips twitched. His aura slowly rose like a volcano that was about to erupt. Nye Tian's expression changed when he suddenly felt a wave of murderous intent in midair. He felt that the murderous intent was like an invisible giant hand that tightly enveloped him, causing his breathing to quicken. In the distance, Sang Hui stared at Nye Tian with a cold smile as he thought to himself, "Damned brat, there is only one outcome for offending me, death." With his status, Zhu Xiu would not refuse to kill a hallowed disciple. Boom! At that moment, Zhu Xiu made his move. An incomparably terrifying aura burst forth from his body as he shot up into the sky like a streak of light and charged towards Nye Tian. Elder Zhu. The sudden scene caused Sang Nanyu's expression to change as he cried out in shock. He wanted to act, but it was too late. Moreover, his strength was below Zhu Xiu's. Even if he acted, he would not be able to stop the latter. He never thought that as an elder of the Blood Soul sect, Zhu Xiu would be shameless enough to attack Nye Tian right in front of him. Die, brat! Zhu Xiu growled as murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Then, he slapped out with his palm. A tyrannical palm energy was immediately released and like a giant wave, it crazily pressed down on Nye Tian. However, at this moment a shocking scene occurred. Boom! In the air, a gigantic pressure suddenly appeared, causing the entire space to sink. After which, that terrifying pressure actually forced Zhu Xiu's aura back into his body. It was as though a gigantic hand had appeared, directly suppressing Zhu Xiu. Who is it? This scene caused Zhu Xiu's countenance to drastically change as he screamed in shock. After which, he inclined his head and stared at the sky, only to see a black-robed figure coldly standing there, akin to a towering mountain peak. Even the heavens and earth around him seemed to be trembling. Such a powerful aura. Could this person be? Zhu Xiu's eyes trembled as he cried out in his heart, "Black Emperor! Teacher!" At the same time, Song Nanyu's eyes trembled as he stared at the black-robed figure and shouted in surprise. Zhu Xiu had guessed correctly. The person who had come was the master of the Dark Martial Hall, the Black Tharch. Black Emperor. To the side, Sang Hui was stunned by the scene in front of him. His eyes trembled, and only then did he react. He was so scared that his face paled, and he cried out in shock. However, in the next moment, he calmed down and looked at the Black Emperor with undisguised anger. He was the Blood Soul envoy of the Blood Soul sect. So what if the other party was the Black Emperor? Would they dare to touch him? Black Emperor Meng Wu, what is the meaning of this? At this time, Zhu Xiu calmed down. His face suddenly darkened, and he shouted in a cold voice, as if he was going to denounce him. Meng Wu was the name of the Black Emperor. The Black Emperor himself could not remember how many years it had been since this name was mentioned. It was rare that Zhu Xiu knew his real name. Humph. The Black Emperor suddenly turned around and stared at Zhu Xiu with a pair of wolf-like eyes. He laughed cold. What are you laughing at? Zhu Xiu felt his hair stand on end, and his body was covered in cold sweat as he asked in a trembling voice. Who do you think you are? How dare you mention the name of the Black Emperor? The Black Emperor's eyes darkened, and his face became extremely gloomy. He said cold, "You killed the cultivators of the Black Martial Hall in the Black Martial Hall, and you ask me what I mean? Are you provoking me?" You. Zhu Xiu's expression changed. He did not expect the Black Emperor to be so domineering. He was so shocked that he was speechless. Old thing, how dare you speak to Elder Zhu like this? Aren't you afraid of the Blood Soul sect? Sang Hui's eyes trembled, but he quickly calmed down and shouted arrogantly. Although he was arrogant, he was not stupid. He immediately used the Blood Soul sect's name to pressure the Black Emperor. Slap! However, just as Sang Hui finished his sentence, a crisp sound was heard. Following this, a few blood-red finger marks appeared on one side of his face, causing it to swell up. Old thing, how dare you hit me? Sang Hui's eyes flickered, and his expression changed as he roared angrily. Pa. However, before he could finish speaking, the crisp sound of a slap was heard again. In an instant, half of his face became a bloody mess, and one could even see his bones. The Black Emperor's slaps had all landed on his face. It was very asymmetrical, and there was no sense of beauty in it. You! Sang Hui's eyes trembled as he looked at the Black Emperor in shock. He wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words when he saw the Black Emperor's sharp gaze. Kid, listen carefully. Not only do I dare to hit you, I also dare to kill you. The Black Emperor's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He stared at Sang Hui cold and said, "If you dare to say another word, I guarantee that you will not be able to walk out of the Black Martial Hall." Sang Hui's eyes narrowed, and his mouth opened wide, but he could not make a sound. Given the Black Emperor's status, it wasn't just a threat for him to say something like that. It also meant that he was truly angry. Zhu Xiu was also scared out of his wits. He did not expect the Black Emperor to be so domineering. This was a clear sign that he was going to fall out with the Blood Soul sect. Was he really not afraid of the Blood Soul sect's revenge? The Black Emperor was the master of the Black Martial Hall, and he was definitely not a reckless man. However, his behavior today was indeed a bit abnormal. Still wet behind the ears, brat. Go back and ask Sang Han if he dares to call me an old thing. The Black Emperor's gaze swept across Sang Hui, and he shouted in a cold voice. The anger in his body gradually subsided. Sang Han was Sang Hui's father, one of the 6 hall masters of the Blood Soul sect. Sang Hui's heart skipped a beat when he heard the Black Emperor mention Sang Han's name. It seemed that the Black Emperor did not take Sang Han seriously at all. Lord Black Emperor, please calm down. Hui is young and immature, and he said the wrong thing. I apologize to Lord Black Emperor on his behalf. Zhu Xiu reacted at this moment, and he actually took a step forward, bowed slightly to the Black Emperor, and said respectfully. His posture was very careful, but his eyes were cold, and it was obvious that he was thinking about something. Zhu Xiu, I am indeed afraid of the Blood Soul sect. The Black Emperor obviously knew what Zhu Xiu was thinking. He said with a cold smile, however, I am afraid of the Blood Soul Patriarch, not Sang Han, and definitely not you people. I am confident that even if I kill this Sang Hui, the Blood Soul Patriarch may not fall out with me. A mere hall master's son really thinks that he is the face of the Blood Soul sect. With that, the Black Emperor's figure moved, and he directly left. Chapter 3680. Chapter 3675. Chapter 3675 Like an idiot. Teacher, Song Nanyu only reacted after the Black Emperor's figure had completely disappeared. His heart trembled, but he did not know what to say. He had not expected the Black Emperor to use such a method to intimidate Zhu Xiu and Sang Hui. It had to be said that this was an extremely dangerous method. If the Blood Soul sect really blamed them, it would definitely not be a good thing for the Black Martial Hall. It seemed like the Black Emperor was intentionally angering the Blood Soul sect, or he was really angry. After all, Nie Tian's identity was special. He was the sect master of the Feng Tian Fate sect. There were too many things on his shoulders. Elder Zhu, let's continue. Song Nanyu looked at Zhu Xiu and said with a faint smile. Zhu Xiu reacted, but his complexion was still somewhat pale, and he still looked like he had yet to recover from the shock. Before he came to the Black Martial Hall, he had never thought that the Blood Soul envoy would be in such a sorry state. Elder Zhu, let's go. Sang Hui landed beside Zhu Xiu and said coldly. Young Master Hui, the selection for the Blood Soul Warriors has not ended yet. It's not appropriate for you to leave now. Without waiting for Zhu Xiu to speak, Nie Tian smiled cold and said loudly. His calm tone carried undisguised arrogance and provocation. Brat, what are you being so arrogant for? So what if you're strong? Your fate is now in my hands. If I don't allow you to participate in the path of Blood Soul, you can't go. Sang Hui puffed up his badly mutilated face and looked at Nie Tian with a pair of gloomy eyes. He growled, even though he was defeated by Nie Tian with a single sword, whether or not Nie Tian could participate in the Blood Soul path was still up to him. Sure. Nie Tian looked at Sang Hui and said with a faint smile, if that's the case, young Master Hui, please tell me if I can participate in the Blood Soul Road. Don't you dare. Without any hesitation, Sang Hui roared. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was extremely furious. Very good. Nie Tian smiled faintly and turned to leave. Stop. At this moment, Sang Hui's eyes trembled. He seemed to have thought of something and suddenly shouted. Nie Tian turned to Sang Hui and asked with a faint smile, Is there anything else, young Lord Hui? Brat, I was almost fooled by you. Sang Hui's eyes flickered with cunning as he chuckled. If I'm not mistaken, none of you want to participate in the path of the Blood Soul. You provoked me on purpose because you don't want to participate. Brat, I have to admit that you are very smart. Lung, I have to say that you. With these words, Sang Hui pointed at Nie Tian and said, The others can choose not to participate in the Blood Soul power, but you must. I don't want to participate in the Blood Soul path. Young Master Hui, why are you forcing me? Nie Tian frowned as a satisfied smile flashed across his face. Ming S.A. Tian, I like to force people to do things against their will. You must participate in the path of Blood Soul. Sang Hui laughed coldly, appearing extremely arrogant. Song Nanyu's eyes widened and his mouth dropped open. His face was filled with insolence. Song Nanyu watched from the side with his mouth agape. His face was completely blank. Nye Tian not only crushed Sang Hui in terms of strength, but also in terms of intelligence. In front of Nye Tian, Sang Hui was like an idiot, being played around like a fool. Young Master Hui, where are the other two? Zhu Xiu glanced at Nye Tian and felt that something was amiss. However, he did not say anything and asked Sang Hui instead. Him. Sang Hui's face darkened as he pointed at one of the cultivators. He then turned to look at Lan Zhuying and said, "And her." He was not stupid. He could tell that Lan Zhuying had a special relationship with Nye Tian, so he chose Lan Zhuying. Moreover, Lan Zhuying's strength was relatively weak. This would undoubtedly be a huge burden for Nye Tian to participate in the Blood Soul path. Zhu Xiu nodded and turned to Song Nanyu. The Dark Martial Hall's Blood Soul cultivators will be these three. No matter what happens, do not change. Song Nanyu nodded with an ugly expression. In the end, Nye Tian still participated in the Blood Soul path as he wished. Elder Zhu, let's go. Sang Hui glanced at Nye Tian and did not stay any longer. He shouted Lung and turned to leave. Zhu Xiu immediately followed. Song Nanyu frowned and sighed as he watched Sang Hui and Zhu Xiu leave. Yu Dong. At this moment, Song Nanyu suddenly looked at the other Blood Soul cultivator and said in a deep voice, "Master." Yu Dong took a step forward and bowed deeply in an extremely respectful manner. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. He could not help but look at Yu Dong. He did not expect the latter to be Song Nanyu's disciple. Remember, no matter what happens, you must protect Nye Tian and Miss Lan. Song Nanyu looked at Yu Dong and said solemnly, "Yes." Yu Dong's eyes darkened and he nodded heavily. Nye Tian's lips twitched and he smiled bitterly in his heart. He did not expect that he would become the one who needed protection. Nye Tian, the Blood Soul path gathers the most talented young cultivators in the entire underworld. Even the 7 princes of the underworld are not the best among them. Song Nanyu took a deep breath and looked at Nye Tian. "You must be careful." "I will." Nye Tian smiled faintly and did not say anything else. In the next few days, Nye Tian, Yu Dong, and Lan Zhuying cultivated together to familiarize themselves with each other and strengthen their tacit understanding. In the Blood Soul Road, 3 people would form a group to clear the trial. Therefore, if one wanted to pass through the Bloody Soul Road, not only would one need to be extremely powerful, but they would also need to have close teamwork. Yu Dong was not weak. He was already a Heavenly Mandate 8th layer Saint Master and ranked 5th among the 7 princes. After a few days of sparring, Nye Tian discovered that the taciturn Yu Dong was no weaker than Lai Xingyun, Yan Wuming, and the others. In fact, he was even stronger than the 2 of them. More importantly, Yu Dong had a tenacious heart and was a trustworthy person. Several days later, Nye Tian's group arrived outside the Yin city under Song Nanyu's lead. At this time, dozens of people were already waiting there, including Zhu Xiu, Sang Hui, and the others. Today, all the Blood Soul cultivators of the Yin city would follow Zhu Xiu and Sang Hui to the Blood Soul mountain range. Nye Tian looked around and saw that there were around 30 people present. In other words, there were more than 10 factions participating in the Blood Soul path in the Yin city. The Dark Martial Hall and the 3 Yin Hall were the 2 strongest factions in the Yin city, but there were a few other factions that were not weak either. Nye Tian. At that moment, a deep voice filled with killing intent rang out. A figure appeared in front of Nye Tian's group. Lord Yen Zun. Nye Tian's lips twitched into a faint smile when he saw the person's face. Chapter 3681. Chapter 3676. Chapter 3676. Trash indeed. When Nye Tian saw Yen Zun appear, he was not nervous at all. In fact, there was not much of an expression on his face. He had killed Lord Yama's only son, Lord Avidya. Lord Yama wished he could tear him into pieces. But now, Yen Zun would definitely not dare to make a move. On one hand, Nye Tian had Songnan Yu by his side, so he could not just stand by and watch. On the other hand, Nye Tian was now a blood-soul envoy. At least before he entered the blood-soul path, Zhu Xiu had to guarantee his safety. Nye Tian, you really want to participate in the Bloody Soul Road? Yen Zun looked at Nye Tian with trembling eyes. It was obvious that he was suppressing his anger as he spoke in a cold tone. Lord Yen Zun is smart indeed. You've guessed that I'm going to participate in the Bloody Soul Path. Nye Tian smiled faintly. His expression was calm, yet it gave others an extremely provocative feeling. Nye Tian, the path of the Blood Soul is not as simple as you think it is. I hope that you can walk out of the path of the Blood Soul alive. Yen Zun stared at Nye Tian cold, and said word by word, because I want to kill you with my own hands. All right, Nye Tian was very calm and said with a faint smile, I will definitely not disappoint Lord Yen Zun. However, when I walk out of the Bloody Soul Road, I'm afraid I'll already be a martial artist of the Blood Soul sect. Could it be that Lord Yen Zun wants to kill even the people of the Blood Soul sect? You! Yen Zun's face darkened and he was speechless. Nye Tian's cunning had exceeded his expectations. At this moment, Sang Hui walked over. His cold eyes swept across Nye Tian as he said with a cold smile, Yen Zun, so the person who killed your son is this brat. It's this kid. Yen Zun's face was gloomy to the point blood seemed to be dripping from it as he spoke in a ghastly tone. The corners of Sang Hui's lips curled into an evil smile as he said, Yen Zun, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. There's no way this kid can walk out of the path of the Bloody Soul alive. Yen Zun was taken aback at first, but quickly reacted. He looked at Sang Hui and asked, Young Master Hui, do you have a grudge against this kid? Humph. Sang Hui snorted, but didn't say anything. Lord Yen Zun, is he the one who killed Yen Wuming? At this moment, a man stepped out from behind Yen Zun. He stared at Nye Tian cold with a pair of gloomy eyes. When Nye Tian saw this person, his eyes couldn't help but sink, and his heart was filled with surprise. This martial artist was tall and handsome. He looked very young, even younger than Yu Dong and Lan Zhuiying. However, his strength was terrifying. He was a first-tier heavenly justice great lord. To have the cultivation of Saint Tianyi at such a young age, one could only imagine how high his martial arts talent was. Zhou Wudi. At this moment, Yu Dong, who was beside Nye Tian, suddenly exclaimed as he looked at the young warrior in front of him. When Nye Tian heard this name, his eyes narrowed and he thought to himself, this guy's name is really straightforward. Judging from Yu Dong's reaction, Zhou Wudi was indeed a terrifying martial artist. I really didn't expect Great Emperor 3 to send his personal disciple to participate in the Bloody Soul Road. This investment is a bit too much. Song Nanyu took a step forward, glanced at Zhou Wudi and said with a cold smile. Zhou Wudi's name was straightforward and domineering, and his identity was even more extraordinary. He was the personal disciple of Great Emperor 3 and the leader of the 7 young masters of the Yin city. Among the 7 young masters, Zhou Wudi was the youngest, but he was the first to step into the Saint Tianyi realm. From this, it could be seen that his talent was much stronger than the other 6. Song Nanyu didn't expect Great Emperor 3 to be willing to let Zhou Wudi participate in the Bloody Soul Road. With Zhou Wudi's strength, there was a high chance that he could pass the Bloody Soul Road. However, once he passed the Bloody Soul Road, he would have to join the Blood Soul sect and become a martial artist of the Blood Soul sect. Great Emperor 3 would give the genius disciple that he had personally nurtured to the Blood Soul sect. This was really puzzling. Yes. Yen Zun nodded with a solemn expression. Zhou Wudi stared coldly at Nye Tian and said, I didn't expect that one of the 7 young masters, who shares the title of Zhou Wudi, would die in the hands of a piece of trash at the 8th stage of Heaven Rhythm. Cold eyes stared at Zhou Wudi. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. He laughed and said, You said that I'm trash, but isn't Yen Wuming even more trash than trash? To die in the hands of trash like you, Yen Wuming is indeed even more trash. Zhou Wudi sneered and said without hesitation. Yen Zun frowned, clearly unhappy, but he didn't show it. Humph. Nie Tian frowned and said with a laugh, if Yen Wuming is a piece of trash, then as one of the 7 princes you're also a piece of trash, right? Zhou Wudi's eyes darkened and a murderous intent flashed through his eyes. He said, Kid, do you know who I am? Calling me trash will cost you your life. Is that so? Nie Tian's lips twitched. He smiled cold and said, You can't kill me. You're courting death. Zhou Wudi felt the disdain in Nie Tian's eyes. His face darkened and he roared. His qi surged and exploded towards Nie Tian. Without the slightest fear, Nie Tian took a step forward, and his sword momentum shot up into the sky like a raging dragon. Bang! The next moment, the 2 qi clashed in the air and a muffled sound was heard. It was as if 2 boulders had crashed into each other. Then, Nie Tian and Zhou Wudi retreated at the same time and stopped at the same time. When the crowd saw this, their eyes trembled in shock. They could not help but gasp in unison and were speechless. No one had expected that Nie Tian and Zhou Wudi's qi would be on par with each other at close range. At that moment, the person who everyone was afraid of was not Zhou Wudi, but Nie Tian. Zhou Wudi had the cultivation of Saint Tianyi, while Nie Tian was just a high-level holy disciple. Their qi was on par. Of course, the one with the lower cultivation was more terrifying. If Nie Tian and Zhou Wudi's cultivation were similar, it would be acceptable. But there was a huge gap between them. Zhou Wudi was recognized as the top genius in the Yin city. It was hard to imagine how terrifying Nie Tian was. Zhou Wudi steadied himself and his face darkened. He stared at Nie Tian like a wolf. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had never expected that Nie Tian's qi was on par with his. In fact, this kind of close-range battle was more of a test of a cultivator's martial body. So, Nie Tian was not weak at all. Zhou Wudi, you're really useless. Nie Tian looked at Zhou Wudi and smiled faintly. He said, Your cultivation level is so much higher than mine, but your aura is on par with mine. What a piece of trash. The mockery was not concealed at all. When it reached Zhou Wudi's ears, it was as piercing as steel needles. Chapter 3682. Chapter 3677. Blood Soul Mountain Range. Boom. Zhou Wudi was completely infuriated by Nie Tian. His aura surged like a raging wave, causing the void to rumble. This guy is really arrogant. He wants to fight with Nie Tian for real. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Nie Tian looked at Zhou Wudi and sneered. He took a step forward and a sword aura shot up into the sky like a dragon. It was extremely powerful. Even if Zhou Wudi was the leader of the 7 young masters, Nie Tian was not afraid. In a real life and death battle, a mere first-tier heavenly righteousness great lord would not be a threat to him. I will kill you now. Zhou Wudi's face darkened and he roared. His eyes were as fierce as a wild beast. Enough. At this moment a deep roar was heard. A figure stood out and said in a cold voice, If you want to fight, you will have plenty of chances. But for now, behave yourself. If anyone dares to act recklessly, don't blame me for being ruthless. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a monstrous aura surged out and formed a terrifying wave in the void. The surrounding space was distorted, and everyone was pushed back by the impact. Zhu Xiu. Nie Tian retreated dozens of meters before he stabilized himself. He looked at the person with a serious expression. He did not expect Zhu Xiu to suddenly stand out and stop the fight. However, this was not surprising. After all, Zhu Xiu was in charge of the blood-soul selection in the Yin city. Nie Tian and Zhou Wudi were both blood-soul martial artists in the Yin city. Moreover, they were the strongest among this batch of blood-soul martial artists. If one of them died before the blood-soul path began, it would not be a good thing. Zhou Wudi's face darkened and he suppressed his anger. However, he could only restrain his aura and be obedient at this moment. He was not a fool. No matter how arrogant he would not dare to disobey an elder of the Blood Soul sect. Everyone, you can leave now. Zhu Xiu glanced at Song Nanyu, Yan Zun, and the others after the scene calmed down. Song Nanyu and the rest were only here to deliver the Blood Soul warriors. They would not participate in the Blood Soul path. Nie Tian, be careful. Song Nanyu came before Nie Tian and said in a deep voice. He could not conceal the worry in his eyes. Yes. Nie Tian let out a calm smile and did not say anything, but his eyes were filled with great confidence. Song Nanyu then walked to Yudong's side and gave him a few words of advice. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. Yan Zun, on the other hand, looked at Nie Tian with a gloomy face. He was gnashing his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. Lord Yan Zun, don't worry. I won't let this kid walk out of the path of Blood Soul alive. Zhou Wudi walked to Yan Zun's side and looked at Nie Tian with a gloomy expression. Yan Zun's face was gloomy and he did not say a word. He really wanted to kill Nie Tian with his own hands. However, if Zhou Wudi could kill Nie Tian, he could accept it. Song Nanyu, Yan Zun, and the rest did not stay for long and left. Then, Nie Tian and the rest followed Zhu Xiu and Sang Hui to the Blood Soul mountain range. Along the way, Sang Hui looked at Nie Tian from time to time. His eyes were extremely vicious. However, he did not dare to attack. Nie Tian was now a Blood Soul warrior and could be considered as half a member of the Blood Soul sect. Before he entered the path of Blood Soul, he would be protected by the Blood Soul sect. Even Sang Hui did not dare to attack Nie Tian casually. Moreover, Sang Hui had other plans. Once Nie Tian stepped into the Blood Soul mountain range, he would have 1,000 ways to kill Nie Tian. Humph. At a certain moment, Sang Hui's eyes suddenly stared at Lan Zhuing and he laughed coldly in his heart. This little girl is not bad. That perverted guy should like her very much. Nie Tian glanced at Sang Hui and could feel the evil intention in the latter's eyes. He could not help but frown and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. If Sang Hui had any improper thoughts about Lan Zhuing, Nie Tian did not mind killing him directly. Nie Tian observed all the teams in the Yin city. Apart from Zhou Wudi's team, there were 2 other teams with decent strength. The rest of the teams were not competitive at all. However, in Nie Tian's opinion, there were no Blood Soul warriors in the Yin city that he was truly afraid of. He did not even treat Zhou Wudi as a real opponent. Under normal circumstances, Zhou Wudi's strength might be on par with Nie Tian. However, if Nie Tian used a powerful trump card, Zhou Wudi would not be a match at all. Nie Tian was confident that whether it was the Black Tortoise Star Soul or the Earth Destruction Star Soul, they both had the ability to kill Zhou Wudi. A day later, Nie Tian and the others finally arrived at the Blood Soul mountain range. Looking at the continuous mountain range in front of him, Nie Tian could not help but narrow his eyes and his expression changed. The Blood Soul mountain range stood at the edge of the Yin world. It was extremely vast and stretched endlessly. Even more strange was that Blood Soul mountain range seemed to be enveloped in an expanse of blood. When looked at from afar, it was an expanse of scarlet red, and it seemed as if a layer of blood mist was floating within it. However, this layer of scarlet did not have the slightest smell of blood. Instead, it made one feel relaxed and refreshed, and one's mind was much more relaxed. This is a type of mental energy. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he was shocked. He could feel an extremely strong mental energy in the air. It was like a gigantic barrier that filled every corner of space and time. This mental energy was boundless and covered the entire Blood Soul mountain range. What a terrifying mental energy! At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice rang out, filled with unconcealable shock. This Emperor has never seen such a terrifying mental energy before. I can't imagine that there's actually someone in this world with such terrifying mental energy. Hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nie Tian could not help but frown. He was even more shocked. The Ghost Emperor was a grandmaster in the Tao of formations and had a deep understanding of mental energy. To be able to shock him so much, one could see how terrifying this mental energy was. Come with me. Zhu Xiu's lips twitched as a strange smile flashed in his eyes. After that, his silhouette flickered as he flew towards the Blood Soul mountain range. Seeing this, the others followed after him. A moment later, under Zhu Xiu's lead, they arrived at a vast empty space. There were many platforms erected on the ground. From now on, you will form groups of 3 and each of you will have a Blood Soul platform. Zhu Xiu faintly smiled and said to everyone. Everyone was startled at first but quickly reacted and fought to step onto the Blood Soul platform. Nie Tian was not in a rush. He saw that there were thousands of Blood Soul platforms here, and there was no need to fight. However, these Blood Soul platforms did not belong to them alone. There must be other Blood Soul cultivators that have yet to arrive. Moments later, Nie Tian, Yu Dong, and Lan Zhuiying stepped onto a Blood Soul platform. Chapter 3683. Chapter 3678. Chapter 3678. Chapter 3678. Nie Tian's expression changed as he sensed the psychic energy. Boom. However, at that moment, the psychic energy turned violent and attacked his soul. His eyes darkened as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Nie Tian. The Ghost Emperor's eyes narrowed as he screamed in fear. The psychic energy was too terrifying. It turned into a psychic attack and attacked Nie Tian's soul. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian's soul trembled as he arrived in a strange space. What is this place? Nie Tian frowned as he looked around in shock and mumbled. His surroundings were pitch black and the space was filled with a strange psychic energy. Like a giant invisible hand, Nie Tian felt a strong pressure. Kid, you're interesting. You dare to resist my soul's detection. Just then, a deep voice suddenly appeared in the pitch-black space with a hint of mockery and surprise. Who's there? The sudden voice caused Nie Tian's expression to change as he screamed in fear. He felt as if the other party's voice had directly bombarded his soul when it entered his ears, causing his soul to tremble uncontrollably. It was as if the person's voice was mixed with some kind of psychic attack. It was extremely terrifying. Kid, you don't need to know who I am for now. Just relax, I won't take up too much of your time. The voice spoke again, as if it was coming from all directions. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from. Nie Tian frowned. Just as he was about to say something, he felt a stream of mental energy circulating in his body. It was actually sensing his martial body bit by bit. Kid, you're not simple. A moment later, the voice spoke again. There was a hint of joy in its tone before it burst out laughing. Not bad at all. I've finally found a decent kid. Nie Tian frowned, not knowing why the person was so excited. However, right at that moment, the voice let out a cry of surprise before letting out a strange cry. Heart of the sky? How can there be a heart of the sky? Why? Nie Tian's frown deepened and his eyes trembled. He did not know what had happened. It seemed that this person was very satisfied with him after sensing his martial body. However, after discovering that he had the heart of the sky in his body, he suddenly became very angry and directly flew into a rage. Ah! Following that person let out a blood-curdling scream, causing Nie Tian's entire body to tremble. Immediately after, his divine sense recovered, and his pair of dull eyes became clear again. However, the miserable shriek still lingered in his mind, lingering endlessly. Nie Tian stood rooted to the ground, unable to react for a long time. Nie Tian, are you all right? At this moment, the Ghost Emperor cried out in alarm, appearing extremely nervous. I'm fine. Nie Tian responded woodenly. He couldn't understand what was going on just now. Who was that voice? Why was it so abnormal? Then, Nye Tian turned to Lan Zhuying and asked her if anything strange had happened just now. Lan Zhuying shook her head with a confused expression on her face. Nye Tian asked Yu Dong again, but the latter was also confused. It seems like I was the only one who experienced that strange spiritual space. Nye Tian frowned and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, he remembered something and his expression changed. He exclaimed in his heart, "That voice, could it be Ancestor Blood Soul? Ancestor Blood Soul." Nye Tian suddenly remembered that the voice claimed to be an ancestor. It was very likely that it was Ancestor Blood Soul. But why would Ancestor Blood Soul appear so soon? It seemed that Ancestor Blood Soul had sensed his martial body and was trying to learn something from him. Nye Tian thought for a while but could not figure it out, so he gave up. Everything would be clear the moment he saw Ancestor Blood Soul. Nye Tian. At this time, Yu Dong came to Nye Tian's side and called out to him while looking at the Blood Soul platform. Nye Tian answered. Only then did he realize that the Blood Soul platform had been filled with people. While he was in a daze, other Blood Soul warriors arrived one after another. Nye Tian's gaze swept across the surrounding martial artists as he spread out his divine sense. At this time, he found that his mind energy seemed to be much stronger than before. It was very strange. He did not care, but carefully sensed the strength of the warriors present. There were thousands of warriors present. Most of them were at the Heavenly Mandate Saint Master realm. Only a very small number were Saint Disciples at the 9th tier of Heavenly Rhythm or Saints at the 1st tier of Heavenly Righteousness. Ordinary Heavenly Mandate Saint Masters were no longer a threat to Nye Tian. Only warriors like Saint Tianyi could barely make him pay attention to them. Nye Tian glanced at the crowd and did not find any warrior worthy of his attention. At this time, Nye Tian suddenly felt something. His eyes narrowed slightly, and then he looked into the void. High up in the sky, two pairs of deep eyes were staring at Nye Tian. One of them was Sang Hui, who had been defeated by his sword. Beside Sang Hui stood a white-clothed martial artist. His eyes shone with an evil light as he stared at Nye Tian for a long time. Then, his gaze locked onto Lan Zhuying. His eyes were like a long snake as they wandered around Lan Zhuying's body without the slightest scruple. "Brother Dongfang, this little girl is not bad, right?" Sang Hui looked at Dongfang Ting and said with a smile. Not bad, not bad. I like her." Dongfang Ting laughed, and his eyes revealed an undisguised lustful light. Nye Tian looked at Sang Hui and Dongfang Ting from afar. His face suddenly darkened, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this time, Dongfang Ting's figure suddenly moved. He descended from the sky and landed directly on the Blood Soul altar where Nye Tian was. Nye Tian's face darkened again, and a murderous intent surged in his eyes. "Little girl, let me introduce myself. My name is Dongfang Ting, and I am the son of the Blood Soul sect's deputy clan leader, Dongfang 1. Dongfang Ting's figure landed, and his eyes were extremely hot. He stared at Lan Zhuying and said with a lustful smile, "From now on, you are mine." Lan Zhuying felt the lustful look in Dongfang Ting's eyes. Her beautiful eyes trembled, and she subconsciously took a few steps back, getting closer to Nye Tian. She was a very strong girl, but facing Dongfang Ting, she felt an indescribable fear. Dongfang Ting was the son of the Blood Soul sect's deputy clan leader. His identity was extraordinary, and his strength had reached the 1st tier of heavenly justice. In the Blood Soul sect, he had a famous nickname, Dongfang Ting. Dongfang Ting was not old, but he had harmed at least 8,000 women. Furthermore, every one of them was a talented warrior. Chapter 3684. Chapter 3679. Chapter 3679. You read dead. When Nye Tian heard Dongfang Ting's words, his face darkened to the extreme. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold arc as he stared at Dongfang Ting with a murderous gaze. He knew that Dongfang Ting's identity was not to be underestimated. But at this moment, Dongfang Ting had already touched his bottom line. If Dongfang Ting dared to take another step, then he would definitely not be polite. "Little girl, why are you hiding? Didn't you hear what this young master said? You're mine now." Dongfang Ting completely ignored Nie Tian. His eyes flickered with lust as he stared at Lan Zhuying. He spoke coldly, and there was an undisguised threat in his deep voice. At this moment, Sang Hui's figure landed. His eyes were extremely dark as he stared at Lan Zhuying and said, "Little girl, it's a blessing that you've cultivated for 8 lifetimes to catch Brother Dongfang's eye. Don't you cherish it? Get lost." Lan Zhuying's beautiful eyes flickered, and the corners of her eyes were moist as she shouted in a low voice. "Hee, this little girl's temper is fierce enough. This young master likes it." Dongfang Ting looked at Lan Zhuying and chuckled. The lust in his eyes became even more intense. At this time, the surrounding people were attracted by the scene on the Blood Soul altar where Nie Tian was. Many people recognized Dongfang Ting and couldn't help but discuss in low voices. "These guys are really unlucky. They've actually been targeted by Dongfang Ting. I heard that Dongfang Ting is a pervert. Once he sets his eyes on a woman, he doesn't just want the pleasure of Mount Wu. He wants something more exciting. This woman won't be able to escape. I reckon that the 2 fellows beside her will also suffer misfortune." With Dongfang Ting's reputation, not only was the Blood Soul sect afraid of him, but even the entire underworld feared him. At this moment, everyone's eyes were filled with sympathy as they looked at Nie Tian and the others. "I think the 2 of you are quite suitable." At this moment, a discordant voice suddenly rang out. A silver-haired figure stood up and stared at Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui with murderous eyes. It was not until this time that Dongfang Ting finally noticed Nie Tian's existence. He frowned and a cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. He looked at Nie Tian coldly and said, "Brat, what did you say?" "I said you 2 are very suitable." The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. Immediately after, his silhouette moved. He took a step forward and flashed in the air. In an instant, he arrived beside Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui. The Blood Soul Arena was less than 100 meters in radius. Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui were already very close to Nie Tian. Nie Tian suddenly moved and shortened the distance between them to a few meters. "Brat, what do you want to do?" Dongfang Ting was startled by the sudden scene and immediately screamed. "I'll help you with the ceremony." Nie Tianling smiled coldly. His 2 hands suddenly stretched out like iron pincers and directly grabbed Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui's neck. "You, stinking brat!" Their faces immediately turned red. They wanted to open their mouths to speak, but no words came out. "This." Everyone looked at the Blood Soul Arena. Their eyes trembled and they cried out in unison. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would actually be able to control Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui in an instant? Such a strange scene was really unimaginable. "First bow to heaven and earth, second bow to me, husband and wife bow to each other." Nie Tian did not care about anything else. He directly shouted and exerted force with both hands, making Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui bow to heaven and earth, in front of everyone. Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui's eyes widened so much that their eyeballs almost popped out of their socket. Their faces were filled with extreme fear, but they could not say a word. "Now you can consummate your marriage." In the next moment, Nie Tianling smiled coldly and exerted a little force with both hands. Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui's clothes were directly torn apart. The strange yet comical scene made everyone's eyes tremble, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. They did not know how to express their inner feelings. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would use such a method to humiliate Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui? One had to admit that it was really too cathartic. "Stinking brat, you're dead." Dongfang Ting looked at everyone's reaction. The flesh and blood in his body were about to boil, and he used all his strength to growl in a low voice. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly darkened and pierced Dongfang Ting's body like a sharp knife. He said in a cold voice, "If you dare say another word, I will kill you right now." Dongfang Ting's eyes trembled. He felt the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes and was so frightened that his mouth was wide open, but he could not make a sound. Sang Hui's face was lifeless, and he was about to suffocate. Everyone looked at Nie Tian and did not know how to express the shock in their hearts. Nie Tian was really too fierce. He actually dared to humiliate Dongfang Ting like this. One had to know that Dongfang Ting was the son of the Blood Soul Sect's vice sect master. Everyone was so focused on the matter itself that they did not even notice that Nie Tian was only at the 8th level of heavenly rhythm. And then, another unexpected scene happened. Scram! Nie Tian suddenly loosened his hands and directly let go of Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui. Everyone's eyes trembled, and their expressions froze once again. Nie Tian dared to humiliate Dongfang Ting in such a way, and he actually dared to let the latter go. Wasn't he courting death? With Dongfang Ting's identity, any expert from the Blood Soul sect could directly kill Nie Tian. Bastard! At this moment, Dongfang Ting suddenly broke free and immediately roared like a wild beast. His eyes were bloodshot, and his body seemed to be burning with endless flames. He, Dongfang Ting, had been flattered and respected since he was a child. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? Nie Tian's actions were simply driving him crazy. But Sang Hui, who was at the side, stared blankly at Nie Tian. He was stunned for a while and did not move at all. He had fought with Nie Tian before and knew how powerful Nie Tian was, so he did not dare to make a move. I said scram. Right at this moment, Nie Tian suddenly took a step forward and let out a low roar. His entire body surged with a violent sword aura that shot into the sky, and it exploded out like a landslide. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui did not have time to react at all and were directly sent flying, leaving a bloody trail in the void. As powerful as Dongfang Ting was, he didn't have any advantage over Nie Tian at close range. Otherwise, he would not have been directly controlled by Nie Tian. Bastard, bastard, you're dead! Dongfang Ting stabilized his figure in midair, and the flames on his body soared into the sky. The evil fire was like thousands of demons, rolling and roaring in the void. Suddenly, terrifying flames surged between heaven and earth like a sea of fire. At this moment, Dongfang Ting was completely enraged. Anger attacked his heart, and his divine sense was about to go haywire. If he could not kill Nie Tian today, the ball of anger in his heart could almost burn him alive. Bloodline power? Nie Tianling stood coldly on the Blood Soul platform. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the corner of his mouth pulled up into a faint smile, without the slightest fear. A mere Dongfang Ting, even if he used bloodline power, would not be a threat to Nie Tian. The humiliation just now was just a warning for Dongfang Ting to remember. Lan Zhuiying is not to be touched. Chapter 3685. Why must he die? Boom. Dongfang Ting's body was covered in blood, but his aura was extremely violent. Terrifying flames erupted like a volcano, turning the surrounding tens of thousands of meters into a sea of fire. Everyone's eyes trembled. They were shocked by the scene in front of them and were speechless. Nie Tian had humiliated Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui in front of everyone. How could someone as arrogant as Dongfang Ting take it? Next, Dongfang Ting was going to fight to the death with Nie Tian. Bastard, if I don't kill you today, my name is not Dongfang Ting. Dongfang Ting roared angrily. Flames surged all over his body. It was as if his entire person had turned into a fireball, extremely violent. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, he thrust his palm out, and 3 fireballs appeared in his palm and shot towards Nie Tian. Like fire dragons, they seemed to be able to burn everything in their path. Yudong and Lan Zhuing felt the burning power coming towards them. Their eyes trembled with fear. Dongfang Ting was at the heavenly righteous realm. One could imagine how strong he was when he attacked with all his might. You really think I'm afraid of you? Nie Tian suddenly raised his head. His eyes flashed with coldness. Then, sword aura rushed out of his body and the soul of the sky was activated. Waves of sword aura surged like dragons, killing everything in their path. Boom, boom, boom. Then, 3 muffled sounds came from the void. The 3 fireballs shattered under the impact of the sword aura, turning into flames and disappearing. At that moment, Nie Tian's figure shot up into the sky like an unsheathed sword. The sharpness of his aura seemed to be able to tear the world apart. This guy is so strong. Seeing this, the crowd's eyes widened and their expressions changed. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. Only now did they realize that Nie Tian was only at the heavenly rhyme realm. How is this possible? This guy is only a heavenly rhyme holy disciple. How can he be so strong? Was I hallucinating just now? This guy controlled Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui in an instant. He's only a holy disciple? A holy disciple warrior has such terrifying combat power. Is there still justice in this world? Everyone reacted instantly and screamed in horror. The martial artists present were all genius martial artists of their own regions. They all had extremely high pride in their hearts. However, when faced with a holy disciple like Nie Tian, there was no arrogance in their hearts. All they felt was shock and horror. Nie Tian's existence simply subverted their understanding of the martial Tao. Everyone discussed, looking at Nie Tian with unconcealable fear in their eyes. Geniuses like them would never have dreamed that there would be a day when they would fear someone far weaker than them. Dongfang Ting's figure moved slightly as surprise surged in his eyes. He did not expect that not only was Nie Tian's martial body powerful, but his sword intent was also so terrifying. That's enough. Don't attack anymore. Nie Tian looked coldly at Dongfang Ting as he spoke in a deep voice. His words carried an undisguised threat. Impossible! Dongfang Ting roared. Then, the power of fire around his body became even more violent. Terrifying tongues of fire appeared in the void, as if there were giant flaming beasts lurking in the darkness. Die! In the next moment, Dongfang Ting roared violently and struck out with his palm again. The void suddenly sank and endless flames condensed into a giant flaming beast in the void. It fiercely pounced forward, leaving a trail of flames in the air as it pressed towards Nie Tian. I didn't want to kill you, but you're the one who wants to die. Nie Tian's eyes darkened slightly. Killing intent surged from his body, causing the sword intent around him to instantly increase by several times. Suddenly, the entire world began to tremble. Sacred heaven-defying sword, heaven and human unity, Yang Qin's sacrifice. In the next moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. The sky sword streaked across the void and suddenly a huge sword shadow whizzed out. Several sword auras appeared, stimulating the power of the sword intent to an extremely terrifying degree. What a strong sword intent aura! Everyone's expressions changed. They were extremely shocked and their voices became shrill. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. It turned out that the power that Nie Tian had displayed just now was not his true strength. It was unimaginable that a heavenly charm 8th-tier holy disciple could be so terrifying. Yudong's expression changed when he saw this scene from below. His entire body froze. He wasn't worried about Nie Tian, but Dongfang Ting. He didn't expect Nie Tian to be so ferocious that he even dared to kill Dongfang Ting. If Dongfang Ting died, it would probably shock the entire Blood Soul sect. Dongfang Ting's father, the vice sect leader, wouldn't let this go. Even if the Black Emperor came personally, he wouldn't be able to protect Nie Tian. Nie Tian, it seems that you're just a boorish man. Zhou Wudi looked at the scene in the sky. The corners of his mouth twitched and he smiled cold in his heart. You killed Dongfang Ting. Do you think you can still live? Of course, he hoped that Nie Tian would kill Dongfang Ting. In that case, Nie Tian would definitely die. Boom. At that moment, the gigantic flaming beast and the gigantic sword shadow clashed against each other. A loud boom rang out in the void, causing the entire world to tremble. It was as though the entire void was about to explode. Waves of energy surged out, spreading out in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying power was like an avalanche, rushing in all directions as if to devour everything. The eyes of the crowd trembled. They didn't expect that the clash between Nie Tian and Dongfang Ting would be so terrifying. Then, endless power was completely released. Nie Tian and Dongfang Ting's figures were directly submerged, and they disappeared without a trace. After a long time, the terrifying power gradually dissipated, and the chaotic void slowly calmed down. Two figures appeared in the void. It was Nie Tian and Dongfang Ting. However, at this moment the two states were worlds apart. Nie Tianling stood in the void, sword will surging around him. Although his face was a little pale, his aura was still fierce. He stood there like a sharp sword. Dongfang Ting's flesh and blood were all over his body. His whole body had been burned by the flames, and there was a burning smell. He looked extremely miserable. He stood there, trembling and could fall at any time. He was seriously injured, and it was because of his own bloodline power. The flames had almost devoured him. If Nie Tian hadn't restrained his sword will in time, Dongfang Ting would have died without a corpse. Nie Tian was very angry, but he still didn't kill Dongfang Ting. After all, Dongfang Ting's identity was different, and he had to be cautious. He had warned him again and again, but Dongfang Ting still wanted to attack. He really wanted to die. You! At this moment, Dongfang Ting opened his mouth. His mouth was slightly open as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Get lost. Nie Tian couldn't be bothered with him. The corner of his mouth twitched and he growled cold. Boom, boom, boom. However, at this moment, in the distant void, a terrifying aura appeared. It was like lightning and the wind surged. Chapter 3686. Chapter 361. Chapter 361 Strange. Nie Tian's face darkened when he saw this. These martial artists in black were obviously from the Blood Soul sect. Judging from their aura, they were all Tiani Great Saint. Blood Soul Guards. When everyone saw the group of black-clothed cultivators, their eyes widened in shock as they exclaimed in unison. Who would have thought that the Blood Soul Guards would be alerted by what happened here? In the entire underworld, the name of the Blood Soul Guard was extremely resounding and famous. Anything that could alert the Blood Soul Guards was a very big deal. The battle between Nie Tian and Dongfang Ting actually attracted the Blood Soul Guards. This was something that no one had expected. The Blood Soul Guards are here. At this time, Dongfang Ting suddenly reacted and exclaimed in surprise. His eyes were filled with undisguised excitement as he stared at Nie Tian and said, "Brat, you are dead." Nie Tian frowned and did not look good. Boom. After that, an enormous aura pressed down violently, causing the sky to tremble. A few dozen Blood Soul Guards descended with powerful auras, and they were like a chain of mountains that stood towering in the sky. Nie Tian immediately felt a strong pressure. His face changed slightly as he looked at the Blood Soul Guards. He was quite surprised. These Blood Soul Guards were very strong. The weakest was a 5th-tier Heavenly Justice Great Saint. There were even many 9th-tier Heavenly Justice Great Saint. Such strength would be considered a peak expert in an ordinary intermediate sacred world. The Blood Soul sect was indeed strong. No wonder they could rule the entire underworld. What happened here? At this time, a figure stepped out from the void. A deep voice sounded like thunder, causing everyone's eardrums to burst. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. The person who spoke was a middle-aged martial artist. He was burly and had a cold face. His eyes were deep like water, as if they hid endless vicissitudes. Although the middle-aged man was concealing his aura was as vast as the sea. He was much stronger than Song Nanyu, Yen Zun and the others. He was even comparable to experts like the Black Emperor and the Three Great Monarch. Nie Tian's divine sense swept over the middle-aged man's body, but he could not perceive the latter's true cultivation. He speculated that this person should be a heavenly tribulation holy king powerhouse, or even stronger. It's him. When Dongfang Ting saw the middle-aged man, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. His expression changed and his heart sank. He had not expected that the person who would appear at this moment would be the Discipline Hall Master of the Blood Soul sect, Sima Xiu. Everyone in the Blood Soul sect knew that Sima Xiu was an iron-faced tiger who did not give face to anyone. He did everything according to the sect's rules. In the Blood Soul sect, Sima Xiu had a nickname, Iron Sima. Dongfang Ting really didn't expect that his battle with Nie Tian would actually alarm the Discipline Hall's Hall Master, Sima Xiu. Logically speaking, such a small matter could be solved by any leader of the Discipline Hall. It should not have attracted Sima Xiu's attention. At this moment, Sang Hui stood out and pointed at Nie Tian, shouting, "Hall Master Sima, this kid is causing trouble here. He even injured me and brother Dongfang." At this moment, he was in a sorry state and his face was pale. Fortunately, he had clothes on. "He injured you?" Sima Xiu's eyes darkened slightly. He first stared at Nie Tian for a long time, as if he was looking for something. His eyes were a little strange, then he locked onto Dongfang Ting and said coldly, "The dignified young master Dongfang will also be beaten up?" Dongfang Ting's expression was ugly. He forced himself to put on his clothes, his eyes trembling, but he did not speak. "Hall Master Sima, you saw it. The two of us were indeed injured by this kid, and brother Dongfang's injuries are very serious." Sang Hui spoke again. "This kid beat up brother Dongfang and me in front of so many people. This is simply a slap to the Blood Soul sect's face." "Is that so?" Sima Xiu's eyes turned and stared at Sang Hui like a pair of cold blades. He said coldly, "I want to know why a foreign cultivator like him would beat you up. As for the two of you, one is a Heavenly Mandate 9th level Saint Master, and the other is a Heavenly Righteousness 1st level Saint Master. How could you be beaten up like this by a Heavenly Charm 8th level Saint Disciple?" This. Sang Hui was stunned. His face was green and red, and he was momentarily speechless. His and Dongfang Ting's cultivation was indeed far higher than Nie Tian's, but their battle strength was much weaker than Nie Tian's. "Sima Xiu, you saw that the two of us were beaten up by this person. Are you going to pretend that you didn't see it and just stand by and watch?" At this moment, Dongfang Ting had recovered slightly. His eyes were incomparably vicious as he growled at Sima Xiu. He actually called Sima Xiu by his name just because he was the vice sect master's son. Sima Xiu's face darkened. His eyes were cold as he looked at Dongfang Ting. Suddenly, a terrifying aura swept through the air and pressed down on Dongfang Ting's body, making it hard for the latter to breathe. Dongfang Ting felt his entire body being enveloped by an invisible force. His originally pale face turned red, and his entire body was about to explode from the pressure. "Is this Hall Master's name something you can call?" Sima Xiu's face darkened as he spoke in a cold tone. His entire body released a domineering aura. In the entire Blood Soul sect, apart from the Blood Soul ancestor, no one dared to call Sima Xiu by his name. Even Dongfang Ting's father had to respectfully call him Hall Master Sima. When everyone saw this, their eyes couldn't help but tremble, and their hearts were filled with doubt. Who would have thought that after Sima Xiu arrived, he would completely ignore Nie Tian and instead target Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui? Hall Master Sima, Big Brother Dongfang was anxious and said the wrong thing. "Please have mercy." Sang Hui was afraid that something would happen to Dongfang Ting and hurriedly shouted. With Sima Xiu's personality, he could really kill Dongfang Ting in a rage. Dongfang Ting, if it weren't for your father, I would have killed you long ago. Sima Xiu sneered, and the force he exerted on Dongfang Ting's body disappeared. Thank you, Hall Master Sima. Dongfang Ting relaxed and immediately lowered his head towards Sima Xiu, not daring to be even the slightest bit arrogant. Humph! Sima Xiu coldly harumphed. His gaze turned and landed directly on Nie Tian. His eyes flickered strangely as he asked in a deep voice, "What's your name?" Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned and calmly replied. He was very confused. Why did Sima Xiu directly ask for his name instead of asking what had just happened? Nie Tian. Sima Xiu said in a low voice, and his gaze towards Nie Tian became even more strange, as if he was thinking about something. Nie Tian's face was filled with doubt. He didn't know what Sima Xiu was thinking, so he could only stand aside and watch. After a while, Sima Xiu finally spoke in a loud voice, "What happened just now is over. Before the blood-soul path begins, I don't want to see any more accidents." His words caused everyone to be stunned. Everyone had strange expressions on their faces, as if they had heard wrong. Chapter 3687. Chapter 362. Chapter 362. The struggle for the position of Patriarch Nie Tian looked at Sima Xiu in confusion, unable to react for a long time. He had thought that even if Sima Xiu didn't kill him, he would be severely punished. Who would have thought that Sima Xiu would let it go just like that? He could also tell that Sima Xiu was trying to protect him. He could feel that the way Sima Xiu looked at him was not normal. There was an indescribable strangeness in it, as if there was a bit of jealousy, but also a bit of anticipation. Nie Tian couldn't help but wonder who Sima Xiu was. Could he be someone who was related to him? At the same time, Sima Xiu was also thinking. He stared at Nie Tian and thought, "Nie Tian, I hope Master didn't make a mistake. With Sima Xiu's status, he shouldn't be here." Even the battle between Nie Tian and Dongfang Ting shouldn't have alerted the disciplinary hall's leader. The reason why he had come here was because someone had asked him to find Nie Tian. The person who asked him was his master, the patriarch of the Blood Soul sect, the Blood Soul ancestor. In the Blood Soul sect, only a few important figures knew that Sima Xiu was the Blood Soul ancestor's disciple. Even Sima Xiu was taken aback by the fact that Nie Tian had attracted Patriarch Blood Soul's attention. At this moment, as he looked at Nie Tian, he seemed to understand something. Ever since he had arrived, Nie Tian had remained calm and collected, as if nothing had happened. It was rare to see a cultivator with such a temperament. More importantly, Nie Tian's strength was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. An 8th stage heavenly rhythm cultivator like Dongfang Ting was not something an ordinary genius could do. Looking at Nie Tian, Sima Xiu's eyes flickered as he thought to himself, "Nie Tian, are you really going to become the person Master hopes for?" He knew that the Blood Soul ancestor must have found something on Nie Tian. Otherwise, the Blood Soul ancestor wouldn't have sent him here to protect Nie Tian. The Blood Soul ancestor's words were, "He can die on the Blood Soul path, but not by accident." From this, it could be seen that Ancestor Blood Soul had great expectations for Nie Tian. Sima Xiu knew that every Blood Soul martial practitioner had to be tested and sensed by the Blood Soul ancestor the moment they stepped onto the Blood Soul altar. For Nie Tian to be able to attract the Blood Soul ancestor's attention, there must be something extraordinary about him. Sima Xiu also knew another secret. Ancestor Blood Soul's lifespan was approaching its end, and he did not have much time left. The fact that the Blood Soul ancestor had taken a liking to Nie Tian at this time meant that there was more than meets the eye. Nie Tian looked at Sima Xiu. He knew that the latter was thinking about something, but he couldn't guess what the latter was thinking. "Stop here?" At this time, Dongfang Ting finally reacted. His eyes trembled and he cried out in surprise. He knew that Sima Xiu was an iron-faced tiger who would do everything impartially. But at this moment, Sima Xiu didn't seem to be handling the matter impartially. Instead, he was obviously protecting Nie Tian. Sima Xiu's eyes darkened as he swept his gaze across the crowd and said coldly, "Before the blood-soul path begins, I do not wish to see any private fights." Everyone felt Sima Xiu's cold gaze and lowered their heads, each and every one of them trembling in fear. "Leader Sima, your actions are a little inappropriate." But at this moment, a low murderous voice rang out, after which a gray-robed figure appeared, exuding a majestic aura. The instant he descended, he was like a mountain, causing the surrounding space to sink, as though it was about to collapse. Sima Xiu's eyes narrowed as he looked at the newcomer. His expression changed as he sneered, "So it's Leader Dongfang." Leader Dongfang. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the newcomer. Their expressions changed. So this person who suddenly appeared was the Blood Soul Sect's deputy leader, Dongfang Jiuling. No wonder he was so strong. Not far behind Dongfang Jiuling stood a black-robed cultivator. Although his aura was slightly weaker, it was still very frightening, not any weaker than Sima Xiu. This person's status was also very high. He was the Blood Soul Sect's Bloodthirst Hall's hall leader, Sang Xiongyu. "Father." At this time, Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui saw Dongfang Jiuling and Sang Xiongyu. Their eyes trembled with joy as they called out at the same time. The two of them called out their respective fathers. Dongfang Jiuling was Dongfang Ting's father and Sang Xiongyu was Sang Hui's father. Dongfang Jiuling and Sang Xionyu's sudden appearance was something that no one expected. Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui were both heavily injured. The arrival of their fathers caused the atmosphere at the scene to become strange. "Leader Dongfang, Hall Leader Sang, you two came at the right time." Sima Xiu's lips twitched as he looked at the two. His tone was a little strange. He had just arrived and Dongfang Jiuling and Sang Xiongyu appeared. This was no coincidence. Sima Xiu already knew that Dongfang Jiuling had been watching him. Whenever he made a move, the latter would know. Everyone in the Blood Soul sect knew that there was a direct competition between Dongfang Jiuling and Sima Xiu, the fight for the position of sect leader. The Blood Soul ancestor had proposed to abdicate several years ago, and the people closest to the position of sect leader were the two vice-sect leaders. However, the other vice-sect leader was too old and had no intention of fighting for the position of sect leader. Therefore, Sima Xiu became the second candidate after Dongfang Ting. However, the Blood Soul ancestor had been waiting for the path of Blood Soul to open. Therefore, the next sect leader had not been decided. Everyone in the Blood Soul sect knew that once the path of Blood Soul was closed, the next sect leader would be decided. It was not strange that Dongfang Jiuling had been watching Sima Xiu during this special period. At this moment, the two of them finally met and seemed to want to use the current situation to fight. Since Hall Leader Sima is here, Big Brother Dongfang and I will naturally follow. Sang Xiongyu looked at Sima Xiu and smiled coldly. In the fight for the position of sect leader, he was Dongfang Jiuling's staunchest supporter. "Humph!" Sima Xiu sneered and said directly, "Leader Dongfang, why did you follow me here?" "Dongfang Ting, what happened here?" Dongfang Jiuling smiled and did not answer Sima Xiu. Instead, he looked at Dongfang Ting and asked. Dongfang Ting's figure moved and came to Dongfang Jiuling's side. He then recounted what had happened, of course, omitting the part where he provoked Nie Tian. In his words, Nie Tian became the one who provoked Dongfang Jiuling, Hall Leader Sima. This person humiliated Dongfang Ting and Sang Hui in front of so many people and even seriously injured them. Yet, you said that everything should end here. Don't you think it's unfair for you to handle things this way? Dongfang Jiuling smiled coldly. The corner of his mouth twitched and his eyes surged with suppressed anger. Sima Xiu was silent for a moment, then he laughed strangely and said, Do I not need others to teach me how to do things? Dongfang Jiuling heard Sima Xiu's words and his face immediately darkened, becoming even colder. He didn't expect that Sima Xiu wouldn't even give an explanation and directly put on a domineering attitude. Chapter 3688. Chapter 363. Not your turn. Sima Xiu's domineering attitude caused everyone to pause, their gazes becoming strange. Everyone was confused as to why Sima Xiu was so domineering, as if he did not care about Dongfang Jiuling at all. It was true that Sima Xiu was the disciplinary division leader and a strong competitor for the position of patriarch, but his status, at least in the Blood Soul sect, was lower than Dongfang Jiuling, who was the vice patriarch. But Sima Xiu's arrogant attitude towards Dongfang Jiuling was inexplicable. Division leader Sima, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to speak like this? Dongfang Jiuling's face was dark as he suppressed his anger and said coldly. An extremely strange aura surged around his body, making him look like a fireball with black flames. That kind of blazing aura enveloped the surrounding space, causing people to feel a suffocating pressure. What? Patriarch Dongfang, do you want to control what I say? Sima Xiu frowned and replied coldly, still maintaining his arrogant attitude. Sima Xiu, I am speaking to you as the vice patriarch of the Blood Soul sect. Watch your attitude. Dongfang Jiuling's face darkened, his eyes emitting a cold light. With a low growl, the fiery aura around him seemed like it would explode in the next moment. At this moment, if he continued to endure, everyone would think that he was afraid of Sima Xiu. But he could not act directly, so he could only use his status as the vice patriarch to suppress Sima Xiu. So what if I'm the vice patriarch? Sima Xiu's eyes darkened as his lips curled into a cold smile. Patriarch Dongfang, you seem to have forgotten that the disciplinary division listens directly to the patriarch. No one else has the right to interfere with the disciplinary division. Sima Xiu, you. Dongfang Jiuling's face darkened as he heard Sima Xiu's words. His eyes were cold, as if he wanted to kill someone. He did not think that Sima Xiu would not give him any face in front of everyone. But Sima Xiu was not wrong. Of the 6 divisions, the disciplinary division was a special existence that listened directly to the patriarch of the Blood Soul sect. No one else, not even the 2 vice sect masters, had the authority to mobilize the punishment hall. The punishment hall was known as the sharpest blade of the Blood Soul sect. Since Ancestor Blood Soul made his disciple the punishment hall master, he naturally had to hold this blade tightly in his hands. Because of this, Sima Xiu dared to act so brazenly in front of Dongfang Jiuling. What about me? Sima Xiu sneered. The corner of his mouth twitched. His eyes were dark like the abyss. Sima Xiu, you're forcing my hand. Dongfang Jiuling's expression darkened as she took a step forward. Instantly, her aura burst forth, transforming into boundless flames that rushed into the void. Instantly, the entire area trembled and turned into a sea of fire. When the crowd saw this, their eyes couldn't help but tremble. They exclaimed in surprise and their eyes were wide open. Looking at Dongfang Jiuling's posture, she was about to make a move. One was the vice sect master and the other was the disciplinary hall master. If the 2 of them were to fight, the Blood Soul sect would be in an uproar. Sect Master Dongfang, are you going to make a move against me? Sima Xiu felt the aura of the flames in the air, but he was not the least bit afraid. Instead, the corner of his mouth twitched as he sneered. You should know that in the Blood Soul sect, fighting against fellow sect members is a crime. Sima Xiu, you're threatening me. Dongfang Jiuling growled as a ball of flames burst forth from her body. Like a fire dragon, it roared wildly as if it wanted to tear the world apart. This is not a threat, just a reminder. Sima Xiu smiled faintly. He was still very calm and there was not the slightest fluctuation in his aura. The calmer he was, the angrier Dongfang Jiuling became. The latter's eyes slowly turned blood red, like an enraged beast. Brother Dongfang. At this time, Sang Xiongyu suddenly looked at Dongfang Jiuling and shook his head, gesturing for the latter to not be impulsive. Although Dongfang Jiuling was powerful in the Blood Soul sect, Ancestor Blood Soul was still present. If Dongfang Jiuling really made a move against Sima Xiu, it might alert Ancestor Blood Soul. The Blood Soul Ancestor was a supreme existence in the Blood Soul sect. Although he rarely came out recently, there was no need to doubt his strength. Dongfang Jiuling was no match for Ancestor Blood Soul. Dongfang Jiuling's eyes trembled slightly. When she saw Sang Xiongyu looking at Nie Tian, her lips twitched and she roared, "This kid injured the people of the Blood Soul sect. I'll kill him first." Boom. Dongfang Jiuling's figure moved and she took a step forward. The space suddenly sank as if it was about to collapse. Nie Tian's eyes flickered with astonishment. He felt an enormous force pressing down on him from above, suffocating him and threatening to kill him. He tried to resist, but the power was simply too terrifying. It completely suppressed the power of his body. He could not even unleash the power of the stars. As the vice-sect leader of the Blood Soul sect, Dongfang Jiuling's strength was unfathomable. No matter how heaven-defying Nie Tian was, there was no way he could fight back against such an expert. Die. At that moment, Dongfang Jiuling roared and slammed his palm down at Nie Tian. He did not attack Sima Xiu but wanted to kill Nie Tian. It was obvious that he was using Nie Tian's life to suppress Sima Xiu. If you, Sima Xiu, do not punish Nie Tian, then I, Dongfang Jiuling, will definitely kill Nie Tian. The crowd was stunned by the scene in the sky. Their eyes trembled. No one had expected Dongfang Jiu to disregard his status and attack Nie Tian in front of so many people. Boom. Just as the terrifying palm was about to land, another force appeared in the sky. It was the shadow of a spear. It moved like a ray of light and its power surged tens of thousands of meters across the sky. Rumble! In the next moment, the shadow of the spear shook and the palm trembled. Then, the two forces collapsed at the same time and turned into endless waves of power that crashed into the sky. Sima Xiu, how dare you attack me? Dongfang Jiuling steadied his body. His eyes darkened as he growled and stared coldly at Sima Xiu in the distance. It was Sima Xiu who had blocked his palm. He did not attack Sima Xiu, but Sima Xiu attacked him. How could he tolerate this? Whether he is wrong or not, it's not up to you. Sima Xiu held a long black spear in his hand and said coldly, "Even if he is wrong, it should be the people of the torture hall. It's not up to you." His deep voice was arrogant and domineering. It echoed in Dongfang Jiuling's ears like thunder. Chapter 3689. The Ancestor appears. They're really going to fight. The crowd watched as the flames soared into the sky and the violent aura filled the entire area. They could not help but tremble in shock. Judging from Dongfang Jiuling's stance, he was really going to fight Sima Xiu head-on. Dongfang Jiuling had repeatedly restrained himself and did not want to fight, but Sima Xiu had made the first move. There was no need for him to hold back any longer. "Let's fight then. I, Sima Xiu, am not afraid of you." Sima Xiu's eyes darkened. With a low growl, a spear aura shot out from his body. Like the shadow of a dragon, it charged wildly into the sky, causing the entire area to tremble. However, his aura was clearly much weaker than Dongfang Jiuling's. It seemed that Sima Xiu's cultivation was below Dongfang Jiuling's. Nie Tian stared at the two experts in the sky with trembling eyes. He was extremely shocked. He could clearly feel that whether it was Sima Xiu or Dongfang Jiuling, the monstrous aura they exuded was something he could not resist at all. If his strength was a drop of water, then Sima Xiu and Dongfang Jiuling's strength was a great river. The difference was too great. At that moment, Nie Tian had a deeper understanding of the gap between him and the truly powerful expert. Dongfang Jiuling and Sima Xiu were only peak experts of the Yin world. If they were placed in the entire all-heaven sacred world, they would not be ranked at all. It was hard to imagine just how terrifying the peak experts of the all-heaven sacred world were. Boom! Boom! Two terrifying auras rose in the sky like two boundless mountains. They collided fiercely, causing the surrounding clouds to churn and the wind to howl. The heavens and earth trembled incessantly. The crowd could not help but retreat. They could not even withstand the auras coming from the sky. No one knew how terrifying the next battle would be. Enough. However, at this moment, a powerful voice rang out in the sky. It was like a thunderclap that descended from the 9 heavens, and it actually condensed into a ripple that could be seen with the naked eye in the sky. It caused everyone's hearts to tremble, and they were extremely shocked. What a powerful force! Nie Tian frowned. His expression suddenly changed as he exclaimed in his heart. His mind energy far exceeded that of a martial artist of the same level. Coupled with the support of the eternal night fox, his perception of mind energy was extremely acute. The voice that descended from the void carried with it an extremely terrifying spiritual impact, causing his divine soul to tremble. In the next moment, Nie Tian frowned and shouted in his heart, "It's that person." He suddenly realized that the voice that had appeared in the void was the voice of the spiritual space that he had entered when he had just stepped onto the blood-soul altar. This voice came from the mysterious man in the spirit space, Patriarch. Hearing this voice, Dongfang Jieling and Sima Xiu's eyes widened. They immediately retracted their auras and bowed respectfully. The owner of this voice was the master of the Blood Soul sect, Ancestor Blood Soul. When the crowd saw Dongfang Jieling and Sima Xiu's reactions, they were stunned for a moment before they realized what was going on. Who would have thought that the legendary Ancestor Blood Soul would appear in person? In the underworld, Ancestor Blood Soul was a supreme existence. Like a god, he was revered by every martial artist in the underworld. At this moment, the appearance of Ancestor Blood Soul excited the crowd. The crowd looked at the void with trembling eyes, but they did not dare to make a sound. The matter here ends here. After a moment of silence, Ancestor Blood Soul's voice rang out again. All Blood Soul martial artists can only die on the path of Blood Soul. Hearing this, Dongfang Jieling's eyes widened and his expression changed. Ancestor Blood Soul's words were clearly to protect Nie Tian. Could it be that this old man has his eyes on the silver-haired martial artist? In the next moment, Dongfang Jieling suddenly thought of something. His expression changed and his heart was filled with fear. He had always known that Ancestor Blood Soul had an ordinary successor. He just had not found the successor. From the moment Nie Tian appeared, everything that had happened was very strange. First, Sima Xiu appeared, then Ancestor Blood Soul appeared. This was very unusual. The only explanation was that Ancestor Blood Soul had his eyes on Nie Tian and wanted him to be his successor. The more Dongfang Jieling thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. If Ancestor Blood Soul had really found an inheritor, then everything in the Blood Soul sect would change. No matter what, this kid must die. Dongfang Jieling's heart sank. He made up his mind to kill Nie Tian at all costs. Sang Xiongyu, you will be in charge of everything here for now. If anything goes wrong, I will hold you responsible. Ancestor Blood Soul's voice rang out again, his tone solemn. Yes. Sang Xiongyu was stunned for a moment before he reacted and quickly nodded. Sima Xiu and Dongfang Jieling were both stunned. They did not expect Ancestor Blood Soul to make such an arrangement. Sang Xiongyu was Dongfang Jieling's man. Was it really okay to let him be in charge of the path of Blood Soul? Dongfang Jieling, Sima Xiu, come see me at the Blood Soul Peak. Now. Ancestor Blood Soul spoke again. Then, the mental energy ripple in the air disappeared, as if it had never existed in the first place. He left. It took a long time for the crowd to react. Their expressions changed and their eyes were still filled with shock. Ancestor Blood Soul left as quickly as he came, but the shock he brought to the crowd lingered for a long time. Sima Xiu and Dongfang Juling looked at each other, then their figures moved at the same time, disappearing in an instant. After a long time, the crowd finally calmed down. However, the way they looked at Nie Tian had become a lot stranger. Everyone could see that Sima Xiu was deliberately protecting Nie Tian. Even Ancestor Blood Soul had the intention to protect Nie Tian. This made the crowd feel strange. Could it be that Nie Tian had some kind of special identity? At this moment, the people with the worst expressions were Sang Xiongyu, Dongfang Ting, and Sang Hui. It was true that Sang Xiongyu was in charge of the path of Blood Soul, but Ancestor Blood Soul had made it very clear that he would not allow anyone to plot against him. No matter how much Sang Xiongyu wanted to kill Nie Tian, he did not dare to disobey Ancestor Blood Soul unless he wanted to die. At this moment, Nie Tian's face was full of shock. He had previously guessed that the person he met in the spiritual space was most likely Ancestor Blood Soul. But when he confirmed this point, he was still very shocked. Chapter 3690. Blood Soul Contest. Could it be that the Blood Soul Ancestor has taken a fancy to my talent and wants to give me the 9 hearts of heaven and earth? Nie Tian's eyes trembled in shock. He recalled what the Blood Soul Ancestor had said in the spiritual space. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. However, the Blood Soul Ancestor seemed to be furious when he sensed the heart of the sky in his body. Is there a conflict between the heart of the sky and the other 9 hearts of heaven and earth, so they can't be merged at the same time? Nie Tian frowned and guessed. He felt that there was a certain rejection between the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. A cultivator couldn't merge 2 9 hearts of heaven and earth at the same time. When the Blood Soul Ancestor sensed the heart of the sky in Nie Tian's body, he felt that Nie Tian couldn't merge with the other 9 hearts of heaven and earth, so he suddenly became angry. If I can't merge with the other 9 hearts of heaven and earth, why is the Blood Soul Ancestor still protecting me? Then, Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he thought of another question. He pondered for a long time, but his mind was a mess, so he stopped thinking about it. He would understand everything when he finished the Blood Soul path and met the Blood Soul Ancestor. He was looking forward to learning more about the 9 hearts of heaven and earth from the Blood Soul Ancestor. He wanted to know what kind of power the 9 hearts of heaven and earth was. Next, the Blood Soul warriors began to rest on the Blood Soul platform. 3 days later, all the Blood Soul warriors had gathered. Thousands of Blood Soul platforms were filled with people. There were about 10,000 Blood Soul warriors in total. These 10,000 cultivators could be said to be the most talented young cultivators in the entire Yin world. Nie Tian looked at the crowd around him and wondered how the Blood Soul path would be opened. Everyone, you will take the first test of the Blood Soul path, the Blood Soul Contest. At this moment, Sang Xionyu's figure appeared in the sky, sweeping his gaze across everyone below. Blood Soul Contest? The crowd was stunned, not knowing what Sang Xiongyu was talking about. Open it. Sang Xiongyu laughed. After which, he waved his hands and a shocking scene occurred. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of terrifying energy appeared high up in the sky, drilling out from the void before condensing into a terrifying blood-colored vortex that floated in the sky like a blood spring. Nie Tian could not help but narrow his eyes as he sensed the aura of the blood-colored vortex. He could sense an extremely powerful mental energy aura within the vortex. It seemed to be very similar to the Blood Soul Elder Group's mental energy aura, but there was a slight difference. He was very curious as to what these blood-colored vortexes were used for. Everyone, the blood-colored vortex that you see now is called the Blood Soul. At this time, Sang Xiongyu once again opened his mouth and said in a deep voice, "There are 3 blood souls in each blood vortex. They can be distributed to a group of Blood Soul martial artists. Only the person who obtains the Blood Soul has the qualifications to enter the true Blood Soul road." Blood Soul. Everyone's eyes involuntarily trembled when they heard Sang Xionyu's words. It seemed that the blood souls in the blood-colored vortexes were the proof to enter the blood soul road. Without a blood soul, it was impossible to enter the blood soul road. There are a total of 100 blood-colored vortexes here. In other words, only 100 groups of blood soul martial artists can enter the blood soul road. Sang Xionyu's gaze swept across the crowd as he said with a cold smile. Only 100. The crowd's eyes trembled as they instantly exclaimed. There were more than 3,000 groups of blood soul martial artists present, but there were only 100 blood-colored vortexes. This elimination rate was too high. It turned out that the number of blood soul martial artists who could truly enter the blood soul road was less than 10%. While the crowd was still confused, Sang Xiongyu smiled and loudly announced, "Now, for the sake of your blood souls, it is time to put your lives on the line. I want the blood soul." As soon as his voice fell, someone reacted and shouted. His figure directly shot up from the blood soul platform and flew towards the blood-colored vortexes. There were only a limited number of blood-colored vortexes. Of course, whoever obtained one first would be able to enter the blood soul road. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, almost all the blood soul martial artists moved. Waves of aura surged violently in the void. Nye Tian. Yu Dong looked at Nye Tian, unable to conceal the excitement in his eyes. "Follow me closely." Nye Tian smiled faintly. The corners of his mouth twitched as he took a step forward. Like a sharp sword, he pierced the sky. Yu Dong and Lan Zhuiying moved almost at the same time. They stuck closely to Nye Tian, not daring to be careless. Bang bang bang. Nye Tian was in midair. The shield of the Star Soul and the Scarlet Sky battle armor were activated at the same time. Wherever his figure passed, the void rumbled. It was the sound of the aura clashing. In such a close-distance collision, Nye Tian's strong martial body gave him a great advantage. Wherever he passed, the others would move out of the way. Like a giant dragon, he dashed towards a blood-colored whirlpool. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian and the other two arrived outside of a blood-colored whirlpool. They stood in mid-air and steadied themselves. At this moment, Nye Tian felt a strong space-time aura in the blood-colored whirlpool. It seems that this blood-colored whirlpool is the passageway to the path of the blood soul. He instantly understood and his lips curled into a smile as he murmured, "Nye Tian, the blood soul is inside. Let's go in." Yudong could not wait any longer. His eyes trembled as he spoke. Nye Tian nodded and took a step forward. He wanted to enter the blood-colored whirlpool. Boom. However, right at this moment, an incomparably violent force appeared in the void, directly blasting towards Nye Tian and the others. Nye Tian felt the danger and could not help but frown. His expression changed slightly, and then he directly activated the soul of the sky. The sky sword appeared in his hand. Without looking, he directly slashed out. Boom! The shadow of the sword whistled out, and the oppressive void sank. It bombarded on the shadow of a palm. Suddenly, there was a roar and a terrible force surged out. Nye Tian's figure moved slightly, and he was forced to retreat dozens of meters. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He stabilized his body and suddenly raised his head. A pair of cold and stern eyes stared at a figure in the distance, revealing a murderous intent. The figure whose sneak attacked Nye Tian was none other than Zhou Wudi from the Temple of Three Yin. Previously in the Yin city, Zhou Wudi wanted to kill Nye Tian, but he never had the chance. Now that it was time to fight for the blood soul, he could no longer suppress his murderous intent. He would rather not fight for the blood soul than to kill Nye Tian. Get lost! Nye Tian looked at Zhou Wudi. His eyes darkened and he spat out a word coldly. What if I don't? Zhou Wudi smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he replied coldly.